football, but he's lost his number. Cunha took his number. I don't think he's going to come back and be like, okay, I'll wear this number now and I'll be a bit part player. I think Marcus Rashford and Manchester United's relationship is done.
Let's be honest, we've all found ourselves raging at a referee's decision at some stage. This feel familiar?
That is an absolutely shocking decision.
They've got a case in that it was a bad decision. It's such a poor decision.
Yeah, I think he's just made a bad decision in that instance.
But what does it take to get to the very top of football refereeing? Every referee starts with their county FA. It's a simple training course and you can take it as soon as you hit your 14th birthday. Once you've done that, you have to go through at least 11 hours of face-to-face training. You'll then graduate as a Level 7 official, which means you can take charge of county-level games. But hold your horses, there's still a long way to go to get to the Premier League. Your next step is to spend a year each at Levels 6, 5 and 4. This covers the top of the amateur game. Only at Level 3 do you start doing Northern Counties or Isthmian League level games, for example. If you've done this all quickly, you can reach Level 2 and ref your first National League match after, I don't know, 6 years? After getting enough experience at that level, you can apply to be a referee in the EFL. There's an interview, people watching you do games, and then, if the EFL are happy, you'll be granted a Level 1 licence to ref in games in League 2 and above. Now, they don't just say on you go to the Premier League, you have to work your way up through the divisions. Only after years of hard work and refereeing on cold Tuesday nights in Stoke can you be considered to do matches in some of Europe's very best stadiums. Now, who was the youngest to reach the very top? It was actually Michael Oliver. He refed his first Premier League match in 2010 at the tender age of just 25. So if you want to follow in his footsteps, crack on. It'll only take you roughly a decade, thousands of hours of work and an incredibly thick skin. In total, there are 37,000 registered referees across England, but the PGMOL has only deemed 21 good enough for the top flight. That means there's not even a 1 in 1,000 chance you'll even make it in. Obviously, referees can make mistakes, but when you think about it, having a go at them is kind of like slating a brain surgeon.
A very good evening. You're listening to talkSPORT, and with the World Cup over, it is time for the return of Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT, with you weekdays from 7, where we bring you all the latest transfer news, done deals and rumours with our top team of transfer experts and joined by fans up and down the country. The football season just weeks away from returning, and things are hotting up in the transfer market. Alongside myself, Sam Ellard, is talkSPORT's top transfer guru Ben Jacobs, who will try and bring us up to date with absolutely everything you need to know between now and 10 o'clock. Elsewhere, we'll take a deeper dive into Tottenham, a busy start to the window of things in the boardroom changing. I'll ask Ben what Xabi Alonso's Chelsea team will look like come the end of August, and what next for Aston Villa. Unai Emery continues to do a brilliant job at the club, but they've already lost Yuri Tielemans, Morgan Rogers to follow. Will Emery be given the resources to keep on taking Aston Villa to the next level? This is the Transfer Insiders. We are back and we are on talkSPORT. And this evening, no matter who you support, if you've got a question for Ben about any player, any club, basically anything, we have to work Ben Jacobs really, really hard this evening. text us on 81089 or 03717 223344. And I promise you, at some point between now and 10 o'clock, I will ask Ben Jacobs your question. Hi, Ben, how are you?
Good evening. I don't think people are going to have to work me hard this evening. I sense we are in for a busy evening.
Well, I felt that, Ben, as you walked through the door. And I don't like to give up, what time people arrive and sort of people's kind of show routines. But, you were here and you arrived like a man on a mission. You had your sandwich in one hand and you had a phone in the other hand. And your words to me were, it's going to be a busy one.
Yeah, exactly. And just to give you a little bit of a teaser, first of all, spoiler alert, I never finished the sandwich, but it is cream cheese and smoked salmon. So first ad break, I'll go for that down.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we should start with transfers, but is that your favourite? I mean, is that the best sandwich that you could have picked this evening?
It was the quickest sandwich because, as you say, people don't care about what I'm going to have to eat. They care about the breaking news. And the reason why I came into the office man on a mission is because Morgan Rogers has signed his Chelsea deal now. 6-year contract, 1-year option, more details to follow, but a club record £170 million move. And we need to talk also about Crescencio Somerville, who has left West Ham United. Roma this morning was seeking an answer on a bid worth €46 million. And then Al Hilal came in about lunchtime and bid €80 million. And Somerville has agreed to that move. Okay, so earlier I spent hours writing things down on a piece of paper. I feel like this evening this might be absolutely irrelevant and a waste of time. I'm going to rip it up. Morgan Rogers to Chelsea. Dot the I's, cross the T's for us, because this happened pretty quickly, didn't it? Just give us all the information about how and why Chelsea have got this deal done. Yeah, it happened really quickly because Chelsea were decisive. Of course, we're still waiting for the official club confirmation, but what I can tell you is £117 million. That's a club record for Chelsea, surpassing the 106 that they paid for Enzo Fernandez. Some people asking me, what about Moises Caicedo? Remember, the initial fee there was only 100 million and there were 15 million in add-ons. So this is Chelsea making a statement without any European football. In addition, Rodgers was being chased by Arsenal. They were prepared to go to 80 million. When Chelsea bid 117, Arsenal got a call. Do you want to match the bid? No. And this was about Badad Eghbali, Chelsea's majority owner, leading a negotiation along with the sporting directors Reece James and Cole Palmer, who's really close with Rodgers. Were both involved in the pitch as well. And Chelsea got the deal done in just 2 days. I'm also right in saying that Xabi Alonso was quite instrumental as well. He was on the phone with Morgan Rogers during the World Cup, basically explaining why he wants him, how he's going to use him. And I'm led to believe that Morgan Rogers was very, very quickly convinced, yes, please. Yeah, it's a common pattern here that Xabi Alonso is getting the players he wants and he's playing an integral role in the pitch as well. And my understanding is that Arsenal had told Rodgers as well via Mikel Arteta he was the number one target. And yet they were looking at Julian Alvarez, maybe an addition at the time. That was a difficult deal to pull off. Plus the fact Junior Krupi was mentioned and even Bradley Barcola. Chelsea came in and said, you're our only target. We've chased you for 2 years. We want to sign you now. Plus the fact that Arsenal's perspective for Morgan Rogers was a starting left winger predominant because Eberechi Eze was signed as a number 10. Chelsea said to Rogers, you're going to start and you're going to play on the left-hand side, but it's a bit more fluid than that. You'll get some time as a number 10. Maybe Xabi Alonso is going to play with 2 number 10s in pre-season. He's trialled initially, early stages, of course, and without World Cup players. The back four as well in pre-season? 4-2-3-1 formation, but there's possibility, if not a likelihood, that back three, his favoured formation, when he won the Bundesliga with Leverkusen, will be the style that he wants to play. So there are formations where both Cole Palmer and Morgan Rogers can be utilised as number 10s, one on the left, one on the right. And I think what we're going to see is Rogers left, Palmer centre, Estevao right, João Pedro leading the line. And for me, that is a serious front line for Chelsea. Are we expecting Morgan Rogers to be confirmed between now and 10 p.m. while we're on air? Well, I never like to take the thunder away from the clubs, but my expectation is it's signed. So now there's nothing stopping Chelsea announcing it. If it isn't this evening, it's signed and it's done tomorrow. But I think there's a fair chance we might get something from Chelsea this evening. There we go. Ben Jacobs there. Morgan Rogers to Chelsea. It's done. We're expecting some confirmation, possibly between now and 10 p.m. In terms of that price, you said that Arsenal were looking at around £80 million for Morgan Rogers. Chelsea come in first bid, £117 million. Aston Villa say yes. Are you? I mean, I think Morgan Rogers, by the way,
is a top player. I think he was absolutely outstanding for Aston Villa for many, many years. My gut maybe tells me it's a very, very good price for Aston Villa. Are you surprised that Chelsea's first bid was so high, so way in excess of £100 million?
No, because Badad Eghbali doesn't mess around when he wants.
He doesn't really care, does he?
It's not about caring. It's about the fact that Chelsea can generate 300 million in sales. They're calm about their financial position. And this is an inflated market. So Arsenal's perspective was essentially when Morgan Rogers extended by 1 year last year, at that point, all clubs were told no one would unduly stand in his way for in and around 80 million. But then you have the Elliot Anderson deal. Yan Diamande, even though he's not moved yet, is valued at over 100 million. Anthony Gordon, with way less time on his contract left, went to Barcelona for 70 million. So you've got a situation where the market adapts. And Badad Eghbali read the room. He realised that if this was going to get done quickly, it had to be 1 million more than Elliot Anderson to Manchester City. He was prepared to pay it. There's no add-ons, so there's not that much negotiation about what if this happens or what if that happens. The variables are removed when you just offer a lump sum fee. Villa ultimately also needed to sell, both to balance their books and to reinvest in their squad. They're going to be very busy, and that's why it got done so quickly, because in the end it just suited all parties.
Chelsea fans will... I can't speak on behalf of all Chelsea fans, but certainly the Chelsea fans I speak to have been frustrated at the approach that their ownership have shown in the transfer window over the last couple of years. Lots of money has been spent, yes, Ben, but I think it's fair to say a lot of that money has been spent on young players who they're looking to improve, possibly with the view of selling for profit. Chelsea fans have wanted the football club to sign ready-made players to come in now and make an impact and get Chelsea, back to where the fans want to be, and that's not just competing for Premier Leagues, winning Premier Leagues. Does this signing so early on in the window for big money, an England international, show a change in approach from Blueco?
Yes, and I think they've learned their lessons, and Xabi Alonso has arguably got more power in the market than other managers, although it's still pointed out there's 5 sporting directors at Chelsea led by Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart. So the model's not going to change, but the model evolves. And Chelsea realise now they need starters, a starting defender. That's where Maxence Lacroix links come from. Talks are ongoing there. Plus John Stones is a slightly newer target. In central midfield, they need to resolve Enzo Fernandez. Maybe another midfielder comes in. They bid for Alex Scott, as we revealed exclusively on talkSPORT only a couple of hours ago. And Morgan Rogers, as you say, is a starter. So people have got a misconception about the Chelsea model because they think it's just youth. Spend. See what sticks and ultimately sell for a profit the ones that don't work. But once you've stocked a certain age group, you then look for maturity and to do less in the market. And Chelsea realised that they've done a lot of the youth-led foundations, and now they're turning to Xabi Alonso to ask who's a stylistic fit. And Dave Fallows, who joined from Liverpool, one of the 5 sporting directors, is really important because he's not just about footballers, he's about characters.
Sure.
And if I was to summarise Chelsea's window, I wouldn't even get that drawn on the figures or the star names like Morgan Rogers. I would say keep an eye out for one bit of continuity, because my expectation is whoever comes in are going to be seen to be a bit more experienced, but also not just top footballers, top characters as well.
On Alex Scott, Max Lacroix and John Stones, you've been across the possibility of Chelsea being interested, trying to sign all 3 of these players. Have you got any more info on the likelihood of either of these 3 players being Chelsea players coming into the window?
Well, Chelsea will sign a starting defender, and Maxence Lacroix is the leading target. And my understanding, as we broke on talkSPORT 2 days ago, is talks formally are ongoing between the clubs. And this is not sporting director to sporting director. Steve Parish is involved and will take the final decision because Lacroix's got 3 years left on his deal. And of course, if you're Crystal Palace, you're saying if Jan-Paul van Hecke goes to Tottenham for 52 million with 1 year left on his contract, then there's no way Lacroix can be less than that fee. So 52 million is the starting point. Some say maybe even in excess of 60 million. We'll have to wait and see how talks progress. Then you have a cheaper option like John Stones. That's opportunism from Chelsea. There's other suitors as well. He's a free agent. And again, not just a top footballer, but a character and a leader as well. So my feeling is that Chelsea will sign a new starting centre-back. Who knows? Because Axel Disasi, Benoit Badiashile, both expected to leave. Maybe they feel there's room for one more, but Josh Achimpong is seen as a centre-back. Levi Colwill is going to be one of the starters at the back as well. And then at Como, you have Jacobo Ramon, who's also appreciated by Chelsea. And when they're looking for this starting centre-back to effectively partner Levi Colwill, what they want now is not so much ball playing, even though that's an asset that Xabi Alonso likes, but most modern centre-backs can do that. The main priorities are height and physicality, and Lacroix definitely ticks that box.
And there's me thinking that we were going to start off the transfer inside with a little bit of small talk about the World Cup. What did you get up to? How was your trip? Ben Jacobs said, no, here we go.
Don't want to talk about my fish catching in Seattle or my hot dog eating contest.
Ben, with all due respect, I was leaning into some sort of small talk, and you basically said, nobody cares about that. Morgan Rogers to Chelsea, it's done. We're going to take a very quick break. And then probably when we come back, Ben will tell us something else that we need to know about.
Let's talk about this story doing the rounds overnight about Pep Guardiola and Italy. Italy, of course, not part of the World Cup jamboree. Does raise the question, Kev, because we know now that there was a verbal agreement in place between the English FA and Pep Guardiola as recently as 2024. Obviously, that didn't quite happen in the end. If he is serious, Guardiola, about taking an international job, in the wake of that collapse against Argentina, is there an argument for the FA making a play now for Guardiola and deciding to pivot from Thomas Tuchel?
Yeah, look, I'd love nothing more than to see Pep in charge of our national team. And I think not only that, I think he'll give us something which will give us direction for not only just for the next 2 years, 4 years. He could help the FA within it. And, you know, I've been part of that. I know the culture and the DNA of what Thomas was talking about in, last week and what they're trying to achieve. But I think Pep could add something different. I think he's got something, he'll give us a style, he'll give us an identity of what he sees the game, how he sees it. And I think he'll be one who'll want to help everybody all down the line, if you like, the 21s, the 18s. I think he'll bring it all together so that it's all aligned and everything else, because I think that's probably what's needed now after Gareth and what he done, and was, when everybody forgets a fantastic job what he done behind the scenes and everything else. We then went to Thomas to go and win us the trophy to get us over it. It hasn't happened. So if there's an opportunity now where our number one target of 2 years ago is available, and it's funny that his representatives have put this out that he's speaking to Italy now. Yeah. So does that say that he does want this?
A very good evening. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders. We are live on talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs with you until 10 this evening. More transfer chat to come in a second. But round one last night came to end in a dramatic fashion at the Winter Gardens at the World Match Play, with the world number 2, Luke Humphries, dumped out by Cameron Menzies. It's the second biggest darts major of the year, and tonight round 2 is getting underway. There is live commentary on talkSPORT 2. It is a stacked night of action, and watching for talkSPORT, it's Mark Wilson. Evening, Mark. How are you?
Evening, boys. Yeah, very well. Very excited, as you mentioned. What a night tonight. Second round, 4 ties. Just 16 players remain in the hunt to win the Phil Taylor Trophy here. 3 former champions and a current champion all in action tonight. Later on, 3-time former champ Michael van Gerwen takes on fellow Dutchman Dirk van Duijvenbode, one of just 2 unseeded players to make it through the first round. Then we've got the world champion, Premier League champion and defending match play champion Luke Littler. He takes on former champion here, Nathan Aspinall, and they're rounding it off 2 Premier League stars. Josh Rock and Stephen Bunting will go head-to-head. But first up, you just hear Gary Anderson, the Flying Scotsman, being introduced on the stage. He will take on Johnny Clayton. Anderson, a former winner and runner-up here. Johnny Clayton has been to the final, but yet to win it. What a way to start the night. Every dart is live over on talkSPORT 2. But first up, it's Johnny Clayton against Gary Anderson.
Cheers, Mark. I'm sure they're having fun in Blackpool, but I mean, someone needs to tell Gary Anderson to turn the music down a little bit, please, while Mark Wilson is talking to us here on talkSPORT. So live commentary of the World Match Play is on talkSPORT 2. Also this evening, it's the first night of the 100 in the women's game. Sunrisers Leeds beating MI London by 7 wickets. The men's game is ongoing right now. Sunrisers Leeds a 95 for 4. England captain Harry Brook in action for Sunrisers Leeds. He is out for 8 runs. Ben, at the top of the show, you told us the news that Morgan Rogers getting closer. We're getting close to official confirmation. He's going to become a Chelsea player, possibly by the time we're off air at 10 p.m. A story that made me gasp earlier on today, and I'm going to read your tweet before you tell us more about it, is that Al Hilal agree a deal in principle with West Ham for Crescencio Somerville worth 80 million euros. Now, I think in 2026, it can be quite hard to actually work out what a player is properly valued because prices are going through the roof. Now, while he's a good player, Crescencio Somerville, West Ham must be absolutely over the moon to get 80 million euros for him. And if you add on the Mateus Fernandes fee that Spurs paid West Ham, for Somerville and Fernandes, West Ham have got, around the £150 million for both those players?
Yeah, I suppose we need to be fair to Al Hilal because often the deal currency is either US dollars or euros, so we end up rounding it to something relatively big sounding. But the breakdown of that fee, if we bring it back to pounds, which is probably something our audience can consume, £55 million plus add-ons, taking it to about £65 million.
Still a good price for West Ham, I'd say.
Almost 80 million euros. And yeah, an excellent price for West Ham United, but they had demand. So Roma had placed 3 bids. And this morning, having placed their third offer yesterday, Roma, and they thought they had player buy-in at this point, said to West Ham United, our maximum bid is £40 million. Al Hilal came in at 55. West Ham always wanted 50, by the way. So people saying that the Saudis have just put crazy money down, they didn't need to. As soon as they outbid Roma, the deal was going to get done. But West Ham always valued Crescencio Somerville at a minimum of £50 million. And then the add-ons, of course, are not always guaranteed, but it's a big deal for West Ham. And when you add up Mateus Fernandes to Spurs, 85 million, Crescencio Somerville, a guaranteed 55 million plus add-ons, and then you think about a 90 million shareholder cash injection, even though West Ham have gone down, they're in a very strong financial position. And if they can bounce back up at the first time of asking, they will feel that they've got a financial footing to build.
With Jarrod Bowen, we know that Jarrod Bowen's going to be playing for West Ham next season in the Championship. Do you know if there was any kind of concrete interest from him of any other clubs, or was it a case of nobody actually came in and made an official bid? So kind of his decision to stay at West Ham was quite an easy one in the end.
Well, it was quite an easy one in the sense that he was deeply affected by relegation and he was loyal to West Ham United. So what was said by Bowen to the West Ham hierarchy was, give me about 2 weeks to think. And then he wanted to fly to Prague where he met the hierarchy. And in doing so, he said, I'll hear you out first. And suitors historically that had been interested, most notably Everton and Newcastle United, were informed by the Bowen camp that he wasn't going to engage and have any leverage because he wanted to hear West Ham out. He was sold by the pitch of effectively make a contractual amendment. So what happens is that his 2026-27 wage is reduced to accommodate the Championship and make it more palatable for West Ham. The contract runs as was, so they've not added any additional length. And then if West Ham United get promoted at the first time of asking, Bowen gets a big pay rise. If West Ham United stay in the Championship, my understanding is then a release clause kicks in and the door becomes open at market valuation for Premier League clubs or others to come.
Do you know what that fee would be roughly?
Well, at this stage, the fee is relatively private. And the reason being is because things in a contract only become valid in a contract if the circumstances trigger them. And sometimes release clauses are what's known as silent. In other words, they're not declared. We dig as media. But the point here, as with Morgan Gibbs-White, when Tottenham thought they triggered a release clause and Nottingham Forest said you didn't go about it the right way and then Spurs backed off, is sometimes the number is only apparent if you bid a number equal to or above that release clause, and then it gets declared.
So you basically have to guess as a football club what you think that release clause
There
is going to
can
be.
be circumstances like that. With Bowen, I'm told that it's a bit more clear-cut. It's as
Sure.
simple as there is no clause at the moment valid, so all parties don't want to share what that number is, because there's an element also of protection, because let's say you get a situation where West Ham go up and the clause isn't valid, but you knew about it, you might use that as leverage to inform a valuation and still try and get Jared Bowen as a West Ham United player in the Premier League. And this is why all parties are coy at the moment. But I can confirm, if West Ham United do not get promoted this forthcoming season, then Jared Bowen will have a valid release clause to leave.
We're talking Alejandro Garnacho on the other side of this break, but just had a few messages coming in about Alex Scott. You touched on it a little bit briefly, didn't you, in the top of the show? Your exclusive earlier today, along with talkSPORT's Alex Crook, the Chelsea have had a recent approach rebuffed for Alex Scott. Chelsea willing to pay over £60 million. Bournemouth made it clear they don't wish to sell. What do you think? Is there a price in mind, do you think, where Bournemouth would be forced to sell? Or do you think, given the quality of Alex Scott, how important he is to that Bournemouth team, that no matter what number Chelsea get to, they're going to stick firm and say, no, he's our player. We got a new manager in. We're keeping Alex Scott.
At the moment, long window, of course, Bournemouth's stance is clear that there's no valuation over Alex Scott's head to the market anyway, and the player's not for sale. Internally, my feeling, speaking to sources, is that 80 million is what they think he's worth. And that's quite a high number when you consider that there's only 2 years left on the current deal. But Bournemouth's valuation, and let's be clear here, is not the same as a market valuation that they're countering or offering to suitors, because Bournemouth have got two approaches. Number one, Scott signs a new deal, likely with a release clause kicking in 2027, similar to Antoine Semenyo. Now, that has been the framework for discussions over a new contract since, to my understanding, March. And in the last few days, the player has said with an open window, he doesn't want to sign.
Okay.
Bournemouth still hold out that hope. But if he doesn't sign a new deal, Bournemouth are prepared to knock another year off the contract, have him head into the final year, and also keep him for another season. Now, Manchester United, Arsenal, Manchester City all made inquiries a few weeks back, but more in the last few days. Chelsea made an approach, and I'm told they were willing to pay in excess of £60 million. And Bournemouth once again said Scott is not for sale.
It is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard and talkSPORT's. Well, I'm going transfer guru. You then listed off 8 different other things that I could have called you.
Guru needs yoga pants.
Yeah, guru feels a little bit. It feels like you're too good to be our transfer guru. Like you're a bit above a guru, aren't you?
No, a bit below a guru.
No, I don't think so. The way you stormed into this studio at 6:57 p.m. with sandwich in hand and breaking news in the other hand, absolutely not. It is the Transfer Insiders. We are on talkSPORT. Up next, we're talking Aston Villa. Yuri Tillemans left for Manchester United. Morgan Rogers close to joining Chelsea. And today, Villa have been linked with Alejandro Garnacho, set to be a busy summer at Villa Park. We're talking Aston Villa next.
You said we should respect Argentina as the holders. Do you still respect them after their performance in the final?
Why do you, Alex?
Well, they played like a bunch of thugs. Even
Alex,
the scenes at full time, they were laying punches on celebrating Spanish players.
Yeah, of course. I don't like that. Of course, that is what they do. They leave a bit on everybody. And then, of course, at the end, maybe their true mentality comes through and you see them as people.
Look at that picture on the screen now for those watching on YouTube. Is that what you want to see at the end of a World Cup final?
No, Paredes, I simply don't. What I would like to see is, look, if I'm honest, I wanted to see Messi do something in that game. I think the Spanish, though, throughout have been magnificent. I think they only conceded 1 goal throughout the whole tournament. They proved they kill you with 1,000 cuts. Their passing's magnificent. Rodri's whether he's the player of the tournament, it's certainly been a magnificent turnaround from him, from Man City. But, look, they'll have to take a good look at themselves. I think the referee was doing the best he possibly could in difficult circumstances.
Because he could have got the yellow card out a lot earlier, but that would have in itself ruined the game, wouldn't it, if he started chucking out bookings?
Well, why didn't he do that? I think he could have made...
he was trying to manage the game. I think he knew that inevitably an Argentinian player
they were getting away, but they were getting away with this against England, and nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And, you reflect on that. Look, they once they stopped being physical against England and decided to play some football, we couldn't live with them. We have to accept that, but we need to build on it. And that's what will happen now. We'll go away. Manager will learn from it. I think really, in the teams that I've played in, playing under Arsene Wenger particularly was helped me to be 3 in my...
A very good evening. You are listening to the Transfer Insider Show. It's Sam Ellard on talkSPORT's football correspondent Ben Jacobs with you until 10 p.m. We are playing, well, I guess it's quite obvious, isn't it, while we're playing that song, really, isn't it? Money, money, money. And lots of that is being spent in this transfer window. Let's now just take a closer look, Ben, at Aston Villa. Unai Emery continuing to do a brilliant job. Last season they finished 4th in the league, won the Europa League. Champions League football is back at Villa Park once again under Emery, but been a busy start to the window for Villa. Yuri Tielemans has gone to Manchester United. His release clause was activated, as we touched on at the top. Morgan Rogers' medical was completed at Chelsea. That deal's going to happen. Luca Dean close to a PSG move. They have signed João Gomez from Wolves and Johan Manzambi from Freiburg, but a story that you are well across, which got broken maybe sort of late this afternoon today, is that Aston Villa are in advanced talks to sign Chelsea winger Alejandro Garnacho?
Yeah, and I expect this one to happen. Unai Emery is driving the move. Villa are looking for somebody out over on that left-hand side, and it might suit all parties. So the backstory here is that it was Roma trying to sign Alejandro Garnacho, and they made an offer of a loan with a conditional obligation. In other words, it starts as a buy clause, and then it becomes mandatory under certain performance-related conditions. Chelsea were not that interested. One, because they wanted a near guarantee or a guarantee of permanence. Sure. And two, as importantly, because Roma's overall valuation was lower. Now Chelsea and Aston Villa are in advanced talks. The player is open to the move, and my expectation is this one gets done, likely with a loan and again a buy obligation. And Chelsea are hoping to resolve Garnacho's future before the month is out.
Let's bring in Neil Dunworth, the host of the For Love of Paul McGrath podcast. Neil, good evening, mate. How are you?
Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. You just heard there from Ben, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and Aston Villa's interest for Alejandro Garnacho. How would you feel about that, Garnacho, Aston Villa next season?
I have to say it's... Look. From everything that anybody said about this is that this is Unai Emery's sanctioned transfer, and that's kind of the reason I've got a small bit of hope for this.
Sure.
He's not my favorite player on the planet, I must say. I just don't see, like, he's been an incredibly inconsistent player throughout his time in the Premier League. But then the other side of me looks at it and says he's 22 years of age, and I think he's had 5 managers in his time in the Premier League. And how can a young kid be consistent when he's consistently changing regimes? So he's, as Ben said there, this looks like it's going to get done. And if he does move to Aston Villa, I'm very intrigued. I'm hopeful more so than excited, but I'm also intrigued to see what Unai Emery has up his sleeve for him.
It's similar to when, for me, Neil, when Villa signed Rashford and he had kind of a bad spell at United on the pitch and maybe off the pitch as well. I was quite surprised that a Villa team that were doing really well, were in the Champions League, wanted to sign Marcus Rashford. But he went to Villa and Unai Emery got the best out of him and he had a really sort of good 6-month spell at Villa Park. So I kind of agree with you. Like, if it was any other Premier League team, I'd be like, don't bother. I find Garnacho really frustrating, really inconsistent. But because it's Unai Emery and we know he's a world-class coach, you kind of almost back him to get the best out of anybody, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, the jewel in the crown of Aston Villa currently is Unai Emery. He is godlike territory with the fans. You said it there. He's continually worked wonders. Even last season, he worked wonders with the squad that he had. And now this is rebuilt. This is Unai Emery 2.0. It's potentially the only chance that Unai Emery has to completely, well, not the only chance, the first chance, should I say, that he has to completely shape this team in his likeness. So you did mention Rashford there and the fact that he got a tune out of Rashford. And my God, Rashford was really, really good at Aston Villa. Then again, last year we had Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho wasn't really good at Aston Villa. But, you know, if we can find something in a Garnacho, because you can see his physical traits. He's got speed. He's able to control the ball. He's able to progress that ball, carry it on the ground. I'm yet to see him have a successful cross, I think, in his whole career. So that's a worrying piece for me.
Not ideal, that for a winger, is it, Neil?
It's not ideal. Well, you say that now, but Unai Emery kind of tasks his left wingers and both these wingers, I suppose, with cutting in and taking shots anyway, which one thing we know that Garnacho can do. I think it's 34 goals in about 180, 190 appearances at 22 years of age. And I think really the biggest piece here is that Unai Emery is going for that Premier League experience, even though he is youthful. And that's going to be something that Emery's going to hang his hat on. And plus, the rumours out there, and Ben might be able to tell me if this is true or not, but Unai Emery had wanted to sign him when he was leaving Manchester United and moving to Chelsea as well. So there seems to be a long-standing love for this player amongst Mr. Emery and his backroom staff. So that's the bit of hope, I suppose, that I'm really clinging on to. That's the piece that, well, it makes me sound like I'm completely and utterly down this transfer, but it's just a confusing transfer, I think, for me, based on what we've sold and what potentially we would be bringing in Alejandro Garnacho.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in what you say. Unai Emery's had a long-standing admiration for Alejandro Garnacho. And just touching upon what you said at the end there, what are your expectations for the season? Because everything I hear about Johan Manzarbi is very positive. This is a serious player that is going to be box office in the Premier League and in the Champions League. Yuri Tielemans, pretty unpopular amongst Villa fans, departing for Manchester United, but there was a £35 million release clause, so nothing Villa could do. The same for Luca Digne as well. Are you reassured, despite some departures, that Villa are not just using this money to balance the books, they are spending a fair proportion of it as well?
I am. I am indeed. And I think you have to be. Because, look, the players that we're bringing in, as I say, you've got Manzambi, who's got magic in his feet, played against Villa for Freiburg in the Europa League final. Prior to that, in the podcast, we did a ton of work on him to see what he was like. And obviously, you know, he kind of came out of nowhere in Bundesliga last year and he lit the place up and he was really, really exciting. So I'm excited about that. It seems to be consensus that he has a long future in the game, even at 20 years of age. And if you just look at his World Cup outing, I think that cements quite a lot of what a lot of people think of him. The biggest signing, I think, for Aston Villa that I'm probably most excited about at the moment is yet to happen. And I'd be absolutely over the moon if Aston Villa signs João Palhinha, because I just think that if we sign him, he cannot fail in our system. And I think as well, the business that they've done with bringing in João Gomez is really smart. Nobody's had as many tackles as him over the last I think it's either 2 or 3 years in the Premier League. But also another under the radar one is Pervis Estupiñán at that left back position. You're replacing Luca Dean's ability to cross that ball. You're replacing Luca Dean's experience and know-how in the Premier League with somebody who has done it at Brighton again and was a really, really serviceable left back in the Premier League there. So I'm happy with the business we've done. I still think Villa could sign 5 more players, so that's hope, and that's cute. There's a lot of curiosity with where this transfer window goes, because when you look at our depth chart at the moment, in the number 10 position, we've arguably only got 2 players. Leon Bailey is likely going to leave, and who knows what's going to happen to Evan Gassand. And after that, then you only have John McGinn and Allison on that right-hand side. So I think they do need to probably dip into their pockets again and go again after Garnacho, and probably even maybe go again twice, because if you want to have 2 players for each position in that 3 behind the striker, we don't have them at the club currently. If you're looking at the players that are rumored to leave as well.
Good news for you on Estepinian that the talks with Milan, according to my information, are advanced and the player's keen on the move. So that's a deal I think has a very realistic chance of happening. Just a quick one, though, on Emi Martinez. How important is it that the Villa goalkeeper stays this summer?
He's the world's number 1, as we all know.
I don't know that, by the way. I'm personally not sure that he is, Neil. I think he might not be in the top 10 in the Premier League, but I'm not sure.
In fairness, Emi Martinez won us the Europa League last year. He was absolutely fantastic, and he's made some really, really great saves. Look, his persona precedes him. All the time. His persona precedes him. He's only 5 minutes away from crying, or he's 5 minutes away from getting in somebody's face and starting an argument, But that's why we love him, because he is very important for Aston Villa, because you don't want, like you've seen a lot of teams in this league, you don't want to go messing around with your goalkeeper, especially if you're going through a rebuild, and we will need some sort of stability there. Now, stability and Emi Martinez probably are not two words I would put in the same sentence normally, specifically after last year and the potential of the fact this year that Juventus must have literally paid every single journalist in Italy to say that he's definitely moving to Juventus regardless, because there's a lot coming from Italy. So whether we do start with him or without him this season is yet to be seen. But I think it's important that we keep if you're going to have so much turmoil in the middle of midfield and potentially up top where you're losing all this brilliant talent that you have to keep your defence solid and you have to keep it stable. And one of those key positions under Unai Emery is a goalkeeper who can play the ball off from the back. And Emi Martinez has really adapted to that and has shown that he can do that at his time at Aston Villa. So I'd be loath to lose him. But if you were to ask me how confident I was he'd be here at the start of the season, I'd probably say maybe about 67.8%.
Very specific. If people want more Aston Villa chat from you, Paul, Neil, your podcast, all the usual places?
All the usual places. Yeah, you'll find us. I think we're the only podcast that has Paul McGrath in the name, and I think it's fitting given that he was. I'd love if we could clone 2 or 3 more Paul McGraths.
Yeah, that'd be useful, wouldn't it?
Multiple different positions for Aston Villa now. Yeah.
Neil, appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll chat to you between now and the end of the window.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. All my pleasure. Thank you.
That is Neil Dunworth, host of For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. Nicholas Jackson has been linked with a move to Aston Villa as well. Have you got anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, this was a player, remember, Unai Emery had at Villarreal, and he'd often use him in wide left areas as well as through the centre. And Chelsea are willing to sanction a sale, according to my information, about £65 million. But there's a caveat, and that is a certain Xabi Alonso, because what he's been wanting to do is have a bit of pre-season so he can decide who is the number 2. Is it Liam Delap? Or is it Nico Jackson as the backup to João Pedro? João Pedro, by the way, not for sale despite links with Barcelona. Chelsea, according to my information, wouldn't even sell for a world record fee. But once Xabi Alonso has gone okay, my number 2 or my competition is either Jackson or Delap. The other one will be put on the market, and keep an eye on Aston Villa because they're one of the interested clubs, and Newcastle have held a historical interest as well.
Ben, good stuff. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Up next, we are talking Newcastle. Anthony Gordon has left. Sandro Tonali has gone. Bruno Guimaraes continues to be linked with Arsenal. It hasn't been the best of starts to the window for the under pressure Eddie Howe. A very good evening. You are listening to talkSPORT. It is Transfer Insiders back for the first time this summer. Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs are with you until 10 p.m. this evening. Tonight, round 2 at the World Match Play at the Winter Gardens gets underway. There is live commentary on talkSPORT through this evening and throughout the rest of the week. A blockbuster game kicking us off. Gary Anderson taking on Johnny Clayton. Mark Wilson, how's it started?
Well, it started very well for Johnny Clayton. He raced into a 4-1 lead. He could have won all 5 of the opening 5 legs. He missed a double in the 4th leg. Anderson stepped in to hit tops. That was 4-1 at the interval, but then Anderson, the Flying Scotsman, where he was flying, reeled off 5 legs on the spin. Couple of key misses as well towards the end of that mini session from Clayton. So he missed double 8 and a couple of goes at double 16. Anderson stepped in both times. He now leads by 6 legs to 4. It's a race to 11 for a place in the quarterfinals here on Thursday night. But at the second mini session interval, it's all live over on talkSPORT 2. It's Johnny Clayton 4, Gary Anderson 6.
Cheers, Mark. A reminder, if you want to ask a question to Ben about your team or find out who your team is after, you can text us on 1889, WhatsApp us on 03717 223344, or give us a call, and I promise you I will put that question to Ben Jacobs. What is going on, though, at St James's Park? Will Newcastle United ever make another signing without being gazumped? They probably will. Will they have any good players left come the start of the season? A tricky start to the transfer window for Newcastle. Anthony Gordon has gone to Barcelona. Sandro Tonali has departed for Spurs. They also missed out on Johan Manzambi to Aston Villa at the last minute, despite feeling confident of getting that deal done. And Bruno Guimaraes has been linked with Arsenal over the last couple of weeks. Ben Jacobs, are Arsenal going to get Bruno Guimaraes?
Well, I think Arsenal are trying. That's the point here. Newcastle, obviously, and we have to respect their position, had briefed this morning, at least through sources that I spoke to, that there's not been any formal contact yet. So they don't have a decision to make. And yet my understanding is that's not strictly the reality. Maybe it's a technicality, but Arsenal have not just held talks. Arsenal have placed 2 bids via intermediaries. The first for about 55 million, the second for around 65 million, and a third bid, very likely straight to Newcastle United, is expected, and broad terms are already in place with Bruno Guimaraes. And yet Newcastle's stance is he's not for sale. Newcastle feel financially they're under no obligation to sell because they've just brought in 100 million potential package for Sandro Tonali, who went to Tottenham Hotspur. But we know that when a player wants to leave Newcastle United, there's a big decision to make. And Eddie Howe will not want this saga repeating like Alexander Isak and dragging on all summer.
You don't expect Bruno Guimaraes to behave in the same way as Alexander Isak?
Not in the sense of boycotting or refusing to play, but Bruno Guimaraes has already told Newcastle United directly he would like to move.
Sure.
And Arsenal at the moment are the front runners. So they are going to accelerate their interest. And from Newcastle United's perspective, it's a huge decision which will not just be made in the sporting department, it will be made at ownership level. Do they want that look in the market of losing their talisman, losing their Brazilian Geordie? And I think Arsenal will respect this process in the sense that if Newcastle turn around and say not for sale at any price, 3 bids in, then Arsenal have other targets. But if Newcastle United say...
From an Arsenal point of view, though, they can't seriously think that 55 and 65 million pounds, the 2 bids, are even like closely to being accepted, especially when, as you said, the Sandro Tonali package to Tottenham was close to around 90 million pounds.
Yeah, you've also got to look, though, at age and length of contract that inform deals, but it's an inflated market. Newcastle might be well within their rights to be saying if Sandro Tonali is 100 million, Bruno Guimaraes is 100 million.
I would think that's how they look at this, yeah.
Starting expectation, having spoken to Newcastle sources, is around 85 and 15 or 90 and 10 would be competitive. I think Arsenal's perspective is maybe 75 or 80 million would have a chance of at least having some engagement and taking some of the smoke and mirrors away from this potential deal. But Arsenal are trying, and I wouldn't read too much into the initial bids because this is the gamesmanship of transfers. Manchester United signed Brian and Mbumo for 71 million total package. Their first bid was about 50 million quid. And there's countless other transfers like that where you begin 20, 30 million below what you're prepared to pay. You try your luck. You get the player buy-in, but in the end, let's not forget 2 things. 1, Newcastle don't want to sell, and 2, we're dealing in an inflated market where for central midfielders and wide players in particular, there's lots of other deals that have already happened or lots of other price tags out there that can inform the valuation. And that's why if Newcastle United are to change their position and sell, then Arsenal are likely to have to get somewhere above that 80 million number and maybe potentially as high as £100 million.
Okay, let's bring in then Jack Cunningham, talkSPORT.com writer, co-host of Inside the Two, and of course, big Newcastle fan. Jack, good evening. Are you worried, mate?
Yeah, it's not great. I was enjoying the World Cup because I don't have to think about Newcastle. Gee, Christ. Right, yeah, so this Bruno stuff. Yeah, look, I think Newcastle have got to just take the stance of he's not for sale. I don't care. You've missed your chance to go. Tonali and Gordon have gone. He can't leave. He actually can't leave because the thing is, the Isak saga last summer damaged the club so badly because it made clear that in the end, Newcastle will fold. In the end, whatever happens, eventually you will get the man. And it left us scrabbling around, and you get Visser at the end, who's been horrendous. Walter Barda hasn't fit in with the team, unfortunately. So that's the situation we're in now. Tonali's gone, Gordon's gone, Bruno's missed his chance. I don't care that he wants to go. It's such a damaging statement to Newcastle to let him leave now. And it's such a clear sign that this project is going nowhere. It's done. That is almost what it is. If this player leaves, Bruno Guimaraes, one of the best midfielders in the world, in my opinion, I think he'll play for any team, but I think you can get one more season out of him. I think that holds this season together. I think that he is that important to Newcastle that with some of the young lads coming in, the fact that we're going back to one game a week, I think that would hold the season together. I think if he leaves, you've got to look at Eddie Howe's record without Bruno in the team is terrible. So I mean, if we think of the end of the season when Bruno was injured, we won 2 games without him in the side, and the form was relegation form. If you go through the entire time Bruno has been at Newcastle when he hasn't played in the team, I think we've won about 5 games in the Premier League. He's basically become such a fulcrum for this side. And look, I appreciate Arsenal want him, and I appreciate that he maybe wants to go. I don't think he would do an Isak. I think if he did an Isak, that legendary status or whatever is gone. It would actually be, the reaction would be so much worse because Isak never gave off this opinion that he was a Geordie, but Bruno definitely has fully invested himself in the club. So if he would then go on strike to force a move away, I think the reaction would be beyond anything he could ever imagine.
2 other high-profile players have gone early in the window. Anthony Gordon to Barcelona, Sandro Tonali to Tottenham Hotspur. Is that good business for Newcastle, given the fees that have come in for both players?
Yeah, I wasn't bothered about them 2 leaving. You know, Gordon.
Even Tonali?
Yeah, look, I thought that if you sum up Tonali's time at Newcastle, first season banned. So there you go.
Not ideal.
Yeah, second season, I thought he was amazing. Thought he was a massive part in Newcastle getting Champions League football and winning the Carabao Cup. Huge part of that. Then last season, bang average.
Really?
Can't remember many games he played well. Bang average, especially without Bruno. Because essentially, one thing Tonali's actually really poor at is passing the football and building out from the back. And without Bruno alongside him, that really exposed how poor he was actually in that position to try and dictate things from midfield. So to get the money that we got for Tonali, I was absolutely fine with. He clearly didn't really want to be there anymore. Family wanted to move to the bright lights of London, which is okay, fair enough. So I wasn't too bothered about that. Also, I think £275,000 a week he's on. Newcastle can't compete with that either. Sure. Gordon flat to deceive. We saw Gordon right at the World Cup. I thought he had a really good World Cup. But the teams he played well against were the teams that he always played well against, like for Newcastle, the big games, the ones where everyone's watching. But there was 2 group games he played, Gordon. He was awful in. He was terrible. That's why he got replaced in the last game for Rashford. So I think we're in a position where I was fine with Gordon and Tonali going, but Bruno can't leave, Hall can't leave, and Tino Livramento can't leave. You can't have every single player leaving. We can't start again with everyone gone. Like Villa have done it really well, where Tielemans has gone, but Manzambi's come in. Of course, again, a player Newcastle have missed out on. Brutally so as well. But we're in a position where you can't have everyone leaving. Otherwise, I don't know what Eddie Howe's meant to do. I don't know what the expectations can be next season if you sell Bruno Guimaraes, you sell Lewis Hall, you sell Taylor Livramento, you sell Sandro Tonali.
Sounds like relegation, Jack. Do you know what I mean?
I would genuinely be worried about relegation because you've got to factor in how poor we were in the second half of last season. No momentum, and then you lose all of your best players. And we haven't even replaced Tonali, and we haven't replaced Trippier or Kraft yet. So we are We are a month away from the season starting. We've signed 3 players. I'm excited by them. I think they're all really good young European talents. I don't think any of them are going to start straight away. So then I think you're in a position where we haven't improved the starting 11. The starting 11 is worse than it was when we ended the season.
Hope for Newcastle fans, at least.
Here we go. Some good news coming away, Jack. Some good news coming away.
Botafogo's Danilo is definitely one of the players on their list, so that could be one to watch. And Angelo Stiller, who was previously linked with Manchester United, is also another name that Newcastle have discussed in their internal conversations. They've got some contingencies, but Jack, I'm keen to talk about an area we've not touched upon, because a lot's been made about the goalkeeper chase and James Trafford is the top target. A lot was made in the build-up to the window about the fullbacks, Lewis Hall not making the England squad, Tino Livramento being on the radar of Manchester City and Arsenal, and of course central midfield because of Tonali and now Bruno Guimaraes. But how happy are you with the striker options at Eddie Howe's disposal? Is Voltemade and Visser enough in your opinion, or do Newcastle need to go out and get another number 9?
So I really like Voltemade. I think he's a really good footballer. I think he's a number 10 though, and I'm not sure he fits Eddie Howe's system, unfortunately. So that's the thing. I think Visser has been a disgrace to the shirt so far. Absolutely. I mean, Sam knows how much I really like Visser.
Yeah, you're not a massive fan of him, are you? Yeah.
No.
A disgrace.
You know, in the World Cup though.
Good World Cup
right?
though, Jack.
In the World Cup,
he's coming back a different player, mate.
Good.
A disgrace to the shirt, says Jack Cunningham.
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him.
You can't say he's a disgrace to the shirt and then say I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, he gets 3 weeks.
Okay.
He gets 3 weeks to improve, right? Asula's going to start the season as the striker then. Asula is going to lead the line. Asula had a really good end of the season. That was one of the only positives for Newcastle at the end of the season. Asula was finishing off his right foot, was finishing with his left foot, scoring with his head, leading the line really well, leading the press really well. We know what Eddie Howe's style of football is. It's about pressing from the front. I don't think Voltemade and Visser can do it. So Asula is going to start the season as the number 9. Now, all reports indicate he's going to get the number 10 shirt as well. And he's going to be the penalty taker because Bruno Guimaraes, after that one against Brazil, he should not be on penalties. And neither should Voltemade after the penalty he took for Germany either. So we're going to need a penalty taker. I think Asula to lead the line. I've got no idea how that will go because Asula is extremely raw. He's kind of like a Labrador up front, you know, run around for ages. And he has got moments of like flashes of quality in him. But I don't know if it's just flashes or there is something to really build on. But it seems like they're going all in on Asula.
Jack, thank you for joining us. Maybe next time we speak, you might have signed a player and not have sold any more of your best players, okay?
I don't think so.
Jack Cunningham, thank you very, very much. But I know you wanted to mention the sad passing of Kevin Keegan as well.
Yeah, exactly. I just think it's not appropriate, is it, to be speaking about Newcastle United without sending our heartfelt thoughts to the football community and Newcastle United fans in particular. The old "I would love it" phrase is naturally something a lot of people know Keegan for. I was fortunate enough to work with him as a broadcaster regularly, and he was always so passionate and insightful, and it was infectious just watching him talk about the game. So what would it have been like to be managed by him? And Keegan always used to say one thing. He told me a story of how at Newcastle United Football Club, your first task is to win over the St James's fans in the first 5 minutes of each half. And pre-match and half-time, Keegan would say, I got one thing to remind these players that we must be front foot, that we must entertain, win or lose. And that first 5 minutes of every half is vital. And his team talk basically ended up speaking itself and repeating itself because it was all about that 12th man and woman at St James's Park. So, of course, our thoughts are with the Keegan family, Newcastle fans, Liverpool supporters. He managed England. He was at Manchester City, amongst others, 2 Ballon d'Ors as well, and just a really sad passing.
Ben, lovely words. The true footballing legend. This is the Transfer Insiders.
You're a Chelsea fan, Tim. What's your view on Enzo Fernandez?
Yeah, I mean, well, this season I've been a huge fan of what he's given us on the pitch. He's a great player to have. He's always popping up with one of those classic goals from just outside the area, sort of just runs in, smashes it in. Lovely to see, can't complain. But in the World Cup, the way the guy's conducted himself on the pitch is just absolutely disgusting. I'm just thoroughly embarrassed that he plays for my club. The way he's just been flying into tackles, that one in the final when he got sent off, him dancing around on the pitch with the Falklands banner, it's just disgraceful. I want him gone. Let's just patch in.
Tim, can I say, I totally take your point on those parts there, especially the Argentina parts. But with everything that's gone on with Chelsea, especially this season, where at times you've been a bit of a laughing stock under the Liam Rosenior moment, seem to come to my mind and seem a little bit soft.
Yeah,
seem a little bit soft. Is it wise to get rid of the one player with a bit of bite, even if he is to all the other things you've just said?
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point, and I've got to say it's one that's quite difficult to answer. I guess it would all depend on who you replace him with, you know.
And you've been doing really well at that, haven't you, your club, replacing people?
Yeah, all right, mate. Yeah, you've punched me right in the soft underbelly there. I've got no comeback.
I think you've lost that one.
Shin pads are a footballer's best friend, even if players like Jack Grealish do wear such small ones you can barely even see them. But what's the story with shin pads, and are there any rules on how big they should be? It all started with cricket, actually. Cricketers had been wearing shin pads since the 1700s. They'd been introduced not for leg protection, but instead to give batters a strategic advantage. The idea was that batters could put their leg pads in front of the wicket if they missed the ball, preventing them from being bowled out. Obviously, that all changed when the LBW rule came in, but that was the theory behind them. It was thanks to this guy that shin protection made its way over to football. Meet Samuel Widdowson. He was a cricketer and a footballer. He played for Nottingham Forest back in the late 1800s, and he wanted a way to protect his legs from nasty tackles. Apparently, he'd broken his leg in a match against Sheffield United in 1874 and wanted to stop it from happening again. Naturally, his mind drifted to his other favourite sport, where players had been wearing these pads. Story goes, Widdowson cut up his cricket pads, sewed them into his socks and popped them on before taking to the footy pitch. Ta-da! Shin pads. Like all great genius inventors, everyone took the mickey at first. To be fair, he probably looked quite stupid running around with these on. But it's thought his whole Nottingham Forest team then began wearing them from 1887, and the first known use of them in a match was in 1894, in a match between Newcastle and the then Woolwich Arsenal. Eventually, FIFA clocked on that this protection was pretty important for footballers. Multiple studies have shown wearing shin pads clearly reduces the risk of players getting lower leg injuries. And so in 1990, basically 100 years after Widdowson first put them on, shin pads were made compulsory. It became a part of Law 4 of IFAB. That's the body responsible for setting the laws of the game internationally. But the law doesn't actually specify anything about measurements of shin pads. It just says pads must be made of a suitable material and be of an appropriate size to provide reasonable protection. It's really vague, and players can get away with a lot. A lot of grassroots clubs are choosing to ban micro shin pads for obvious reasons, though, especially after a 15-year-old player from Penistone Church broke his leg while wearing them. Still no change from IFAB, though. That's why Grealish and co can still get away with these ones, which are no bigger than a credit card and which seem to offer little to no protection whatsoever.
A very good evening. You are listening to the Transfer Insiders. We are live on talkSPORT. It's Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs, talkSPORT's football correspondent, transfer guru, with you until 10 this evening. Ben revealing at the top of the show, expecting Morgan Rogers to Chelsea to be confirmed this evening. I just saw a video that the Sky running on TV, and it must be from Morgan Rogers arriving for his medical. Yeah, and there's a guy who is basically trying to stop the camera from seeing Morgan Rogers entering the building. And I'm like to myself, we know it's Morgan Rogers. We know Morgan Rogers is having a medical at Chelsea. We know that Morgan Rogers is going to sign for Chelsea. And some guy, like, with all of his effort in his body, is trying to stop the camera from picking up Morgan. Like, we kind of know who it is. It's not that much of a surprise that it's Morgan Rogers coming into Chelsea.
Yeah, a bit of insight here. So, first of all, medicals are sensitive and sometimes they happen off-site, and it can be less about shielding the player and more about not letting slip where the medical takes place, because maybe there's other guests that are at that facility. Some clubs in London, for example, use a central London location. So I don't think this was about hiding Morgan Rogers.
Hiding the location of where.
Exactly, because they're not all at Cobham, although sometimes they can be as well. And we saw, for example, Elliot Anderson do his medical on England duty. And then just on Rogers again, what we said at the top of the show is a 6-year contract and a 1-year option is signed. Let's wait and see when Chelsea choose to announce it. If it is to be this evening, we'll bring you that news as it breaks.
And Aston Villa as well, to throw into the mix, are currently playing tonight, aren't they?
Well, that's a good point as well. They've got a game ongoing, so both clubs have to align on an announcement, and it has to suit all parties. So I never like to steal a club's thunder.
No, I wouldn't you
say
to.
It's going to be at this time. It's going to be on this day. But once again, there is nothing stopping in terms of legalities or paperwork. The club's now making an announcement because earlier today, Morgan Rogers signed that deal ahead of a move that will be £117 million.
When that is confirmed, us here at talkSPORT and Ben Jacobs will tell you exactly when that will be. I think it's fair to say it's been a tough couple of seasons at Tottenham. Back-to-back 17th place finishes, only sealing survival on the final day of last season. There has been a lot of anger from fans towards the hierarchy at the club, which stems back, I think it's fair to say, to 2019. Spurs, of course, getting to a Champions League final, but from that moment on, have never really showed the right ambition in the transfer window to carry on competing with the top clubs, and yet it's cost them from a Champions League final to fighting relegation within the space of 6 years or so. But are things starting to look a little different at the football club? Roberto De Zerbi is in charge. We know he's an ambitious man, has high expectations, and Spurs have been ambitious so far in the transfer window. They've signed Sandro Tonali for big money. Jean-Paul Van Heck from Brighton has come in. Mateus Fernandes from West Ham also for big money. Andy Robertson and Marco Senesi also arriving on a free. Chris Cowlin from the Spurs Chat podcast joins us live now on talkSPORT. Chris, a very good evening. As I reel off those names, good players are rising for big money. What on earth's happening behind the scenes at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, Chris?
Sam, first of all, good evening to you and Ben.
Hello,
and great to talk to you again. It is very different this summer transfer window, and it needs to be very different because, as you mentioned there, the last couple of seasons haven't been good enough. And as you also mentioned, since 2019, we have gone through so many different managers at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and interim managers as well, and it hasn't been good enough. The football needs to be a lot better, and the ambition needs to be a lot better, and it certainly has been in this transfer window so far. And as you mentioned there, some of the players, signing Sandro Tonali for a £100 million package, we didn't think that this was going to be possible, and we didn't ever think that we would see this amount of money spent at Tottenham Hotspur, and this is exactly what needs to happen now. Dramatic changes need to happen. We have seen the wage structure change. We have seen top players come in this transfer window. It's great to see as well, in the last 10 minutes or so, the club have just put out a short interview with Roberto De Zerbi, and he said he is excited and he wants to build a strong team, and that is exactly what we are doing. We need the depth as well, and we certainly need European football back at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but ultimately we cannot be in that same position we were on the final day where we were fighting against relegation, because that was too close for comfort.
Ben, have you been surprised at how Spurs have gone about their business so far on this transfer window?
Not surprised, because I think staying up was a wake-up call, and this is about the newer members of the Lewis family, Nick Boscher in particular, who's driving a lot of the strategy, backing Roberto De Zerbi. And my sense was always, what changed between De Zerbi leaving Marseille, being a free agent on the same day that Thomas Frank was sacked, and not being able to get him at that point, then also failing to persuade Roberto De Zerbi in the immediate aftermath of that first leg chastening defeat to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. And then suddenly De Zerbi was like, okay, I'm going to take it now. I'm going to shoulder the burden of trying to keep Tottenham in the Premier League. And my expectation on day one when De Zerbi signed a long-term contract was he was in this for the long haul, even if Tottenham had gone down. And the reason why? Because he was told, we're going to back you in the market, but also we're going to let you pick that other co-sporting director, which originally was set to be Sebastian Kell. My info is De Zerbi had other ideas. And Tottenham have got money to spend, because don't forget, even without European football, under financial fair play, they were always only around the 60% of total revenue on transfers, and you can go to 70. Their wage bill had never been up there with the Manchester Uniteds or the Manchester Cities of this world. There were 2 capital injections, each of 100 million, the most recent one only a couple of weeks ago. It's working capital, but some of it is on transfers. And under squad cost ratio, the new version of PSR, there's more rope to work with because this is a transitional year. So Tottenham, heading out of an FFP cycle, can spend up to 85% now of revenue on transfers, but you can also go another 30% beyond that and still basically incur no penalties. And then De Zerbi in the market is calling a lot of the shots. He's from Brescia. Tonali came through Brescia. They've known each other for a while. Tonali gave his word to De Zerbi, not just Tottenham, and then the deal got done quickly. Mateus Fernandes, it was a bidding war with West Ham. He would have joined either Manchester United or Tottenham. Highest price one. Daniel Levy would have run a mile. Nick Bosher and the Tottenham hierarchy paying what it takes. And remember one other thing. This is Tottenham trying to get into the Champions League, not just being far away from a relegation battle. And they're not done as a result. So they've sorted their goalkeeper, they've sorted their defence, they've sorted their midfield. On the cards now, left winger, Savinho top target, and very possibly a number 9 as well.
Okay, 2 questions for you then, Chris. Firstly, on Savinho, what would you make of that? And also, is something that's quite optimistic for Tottenham fans is that all these new players are coming in, but also players like Kulusevski and Maddison and Solanke, 3 of your best attacking players, kind of barely kicked a football last season.
Absolutely, and I think that Ben is absolutely spot on there. A number 9 and a left winger is certainly, on the cards, and that is certainly the players that we should be targeting. A replacement for Heung-min Son is definitely needed, and a top-class number 9, someone that can put in the ball in the net and have an option for Roberto De Zerbi. But you're also right there, Sam. You know, when you've got the likes of Maddison, of course, he come back at the end of last season, but Kulusevski hasn't kicked a football for over a year. Mohamed Kudus as well will come back. Solanke has had injury problems. Javi Simmons will come back. So we have got a very, very decent squad. But we do need to certainly strengthen in that final third. And Savinho, that's going to be an interesting one. Perhaps Ben can tell us a little bit more on that. But, we were meant to be signing him last summer. That didn't happen. But Fabrizio Romano and co, they keep telling us that this is going to be on the cards. Spurs want this player in the door. And as you also rightly mentioned there, Sam, a number of players are going out the door. But we expect, as Tottenham Hotspur fans, that this is going to be another major rebuild. And like Ben touched on there, the football club are giving Roberto De Zerbi a bigger say than any manager has had since we moved into the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But all I can say at the moment is that it has been a very, very dull and dismal last few years.
But yeah, by the way, Chris, you mentioned, you've said Fabrizio Romano's name on the show. Let me tell you this, Fabrizio Romano has posters of Ben Jacobs on his bedroom wall. So, who needs Fabrizio Romano when you got Ben Jacobs in the talkSPORT studio, my friend,
I don't have a cool Italian accent, though, unfortunately. But what I can tell you, Chris, is the Savinho talks are very positive. It's not actually about the finances. It is about whether Man City can find a replacement in that position.
Could that be Jack Grealish, or is he not?
Well, Jack Grealish will get the opportunity to be reintegrated. Everton would still be open to some kind of deal, most likely an option to buy with a loan structure. But the reality is Savinho is not the kind of winger Enzo Maresca likes, because he wants goal contributions rather than only somebody that can run with pace and get what's known as white chalk on the boots. In other words, hug the touchline. So my information on Savinho is that the offer Tottenham placed 12 months ago was fine financially. It was just blocked at board level by Ferran Soriano. Flash forwards, talks are ongoing, but it's all about whether Manchester City can bring someone in. And then with outgoings, 2 little bits of breaking news, one actual Spurs and one almost Spurs.
He Spurs, isn't he, this man, yeah.
Will Lancashire, first of all, is going to be leaving Tottenham, and it's 20 million package, of which around 10 million is a guaranteed fee, and he's heading to Middlesbrough. That deal was formalised earlier today. And then ex-Spurs, Luka Modric, who is at Milan and is also part of the Swansea ownership team, along with Snoop Dogg, by the way. He is going to extend, according to my information, at Milan by 1 extra season.
Thanks, Ben. Chris, one more for you. On the makeup of the defence next season, what's it going to look like? Because obviously a couple of new faces, or 3 new faces, have come through the door, and Senesi, Van Heck and Robertson. You've got Jed Spence, the most famous and most popular man in the country right now, obviously at Spurs. So how will the defence look, and do you want to see Christian Romero on his way out?
I think Romero, I think his time is done at Tottenham Hotspur, and I think that I don't think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be sad to see him go, particularly after the World Cup as well. So, we have had a number of defensive reinforcements in, so I think we're well covered in that area. Jed Spence is a funny one for me because, Pedro Porro has just signed a new contract, so is he going to fight out with him to be at right back? Because, of course, Jed Spence is very good at left back, but now we've got Andy Robertson, Destiny Udogie, who Roberto De Zerbi really likes as well. So it's going to be very interesting. But there's 42 days left of this transfer window, and I think that there is going to be a lot of activity in terms of more incomings and more outgoings. But one thing I would like to say is that this feels very exciting. It does feel very exciting under Roberto De Zerbi, the type of football that he wants to play. And of course, we are all very thankful to him for keeping us in the Premier League. And, it does feel exciting. I'm actually at the airport on my way to New Zealand for the pre-season tour.
Oh, happy days, Chris.
That's how excited I am.
Yeah, mate, good stuff. Yeah, enjoy it. I've done that flight before, Chris. It's a tough one, mate.
It is.
Brutal, yeah. Chris, just one word. Where will you finish next season?
It has to be in a European place, Ben. For me, it has to be Europe.
Do you know what, Chris? I really would have loved it if you went 16th. Like improvements next season. We're not coming 17th. We're coming comfortably 16th. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's Chris Cannon from the Spurs Chat podcast. Mate, safe flight. Enjoy your trip.
Thank you. Cheers.
Transfer Sliders on talkSPORT. Up next, we're talking all things Liverpool.
There is a line that you should not overstep, and they overstepped it communally numerous times.
Got to be a long ban.
Yeah.
Jeff, if you look at it, Jeff, if you watch it back 5 or 6 times, Paredes, what we say, on Garcia, he grabs his neck, and the way Garcia's neck, after the game, Garcia's neck jolts. That's assault.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Like, it's assault.
Like you, Stuart Pearce believes that the Argentinian midfielder needs an incredibly strong punishment.
Oh.
But you've got to say, and just to back up exactly what you've just said there, sometimes in life and in football, what goes round comes round. And that's exactly what's happened to Argentina today. And I'm sure FIFA will see the punch that was thrown at the end of the game, and obviously they were quite happy to extend a 6-game ban for a Qatari player, and I'm sure when they see a punch like that, it will probably warranty a 20-game ban. I'm sure FIFA will be right on top of this, Aid.
Yeah. Well, they should be, because something's got to be done to stop.
You want to feel
like
safe on the pitch, don't you, Jeff? Do you know what I mean? You can't let the punishment has to be that big that no one ever does that.
It is assault. You got it absolutely.
No matter what happens in football, you can be angry you lost, but be classy in defeat.
Yeah.
Don't like. Do you know what I mean? If you want to fight, Paredes, there's places to fight. Not on a pitch against a Garcia. The way he was manhandling, I think it was Gavi, 21-year-old kid, and you're throwing him around on the pitch. That's someone's son, someone's brother.
Yeah.
Disgraceful. I'll ban him from the whole next tournament if I had my way.
I mean,
Howard.
They were shameless, classless thugs.
Yes.
During the game and after the game.
A very good evening. It is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs are with you until 10 p.m. We have got some live sport going on right now on talkSPORT to the live commentary of the World Match Play. And we have our first result of the evening. Gary Anderson is just beating Johnny Caton 11-7. Live commentary of that continues right now on talkSPORT 2. And in the 100, MI London are 22 for 2 after 24 balls, chasing 143 against Sunrisers. Harry Brooke is involved in that game for Sunrisers, the England captain, making 8 runs. Ben Jacobs, let's talk Liverpool, shall we? Before we do, some transfer news and what's next for Andoni Iraola. Some big news today regarding a potential further investment in Liverpool Football Club.
Yeah, first broken by the Financial Times, but confirmed by talkSPORT, and that is that Amit Bhatia and a consortium that he has put together are in talks to buy minority stake at Liverpool. Now, I'm told discussions here are ongoing and nothing is finalised, but the proposal in question is similar to previous investment by Dynasty in 2023. And remember, this is FSG speaking to the consortium on behalf of Liverpool. FSG are open to strategic partners to further position Liverpool Football Club for success. And intriguingly, Bhatia today, in a separate story, formally stood down from QPR as both a co-owner and a director as well. And FSG issued a statement to talkSPORT confirming this story, and it reads, an investment consortium led, managed and represented by Amit Bhatia has expressed interest in making a strategic minority investment in Liverpool.
Elsewhere, a story we learned of last week, Liverpool facing a lot of behind-the-scenes upheaval because Michael Edwards has left the football club. He was the chief executive officer of FSG. He was the sporting director when Jurgen Klopp was manager up until 2022, but returned to FSG in 2024 with a view to lead the ownership's operation to acquire a second club. So he kind of came in, was kind of promoted, and Richard Hughes came in and kind of worked in what was Michael Edwards' old role. How important do you think this is for Liverpool that he's no longer with FSG?
It's a blow, but not necessarily a surprise, because Edwards actually informed FSG and therefore Liverpool in November of last year. And the challenge is that Michael Edwards does not want to be a sporting director. He does not want to work for a singular club. He'll either go multi-sport with a club, which is where some of the Saudi links come from, because like Dougie Freeman, ex-Crystal Palace at Diriyah, he's able to oversee not just football, but things like basketball and athletics and swimming, and there's even some crossover therefore with some Olympians. Or he wants to be multi-club as opposed to multi-sport, where he can find a club, buy a club and develop it as a standalone project. So when Liverpool and FSG brought Edwards back as their CEO of football, the main appeal was go out there and find another club, and FSG would build a multi-club football network. And they tried for Bordeaux, but the financial situation there was difficult during the due diligence. And then around the time Edwards said, I think I want to move on, he had an opportunity to investigate Malaga, and seemingly FSG changed their mind about buying a club at all. So Edwards decided,
Why do you think that is?
Because there's different strategies. FSG have got lots of different sports. Perhaps they feel like there's a lot to do in-house at Liverpool rather than taking on the financial magnitude and also all of the logistical and football aspirations of having a new club overnight. Because my info was always that buying another club for FSG was never going to be about a feeder club for Liverpool. It was a standalone project, and they needed, therefore, a very specific kind of club with very specific infrastructure and a defined culture and a fan base. So there weren't that many options. But when Malaga didn't come off, Edwards said that he wanted to move on. His contract was always expiring anyway in 2027. So Liverpool have known about this for quite some time. The bigger issue is going to be after this window, Richard Hughes is also expected to join Al Hilal. So Liverpool are now faced with, do they appoint another CEO of football? Or as of now, Mike Gordon has reassumed that responsibility. And then on top of that, what do they do after, if expected, Richard Hughes goes to Al Hilal? And is that a whole upheaval too? But the reason why Liverpool are calm is because they believe that, one, they've known about all this news, including Richard Hughes, for quite some time, and two, they're expert planners. So the transition has been Edwards staying on, Edwards doing last summer and this summer along with Richard Hughes, and Liverpool making a concerted effort to first appoint and then back Andoni Iraola in the market. And from there, the expectation is, along with Edwards, Hughes will move on, whether this summer or at the latest when his contract expires in summer 2027.
A question then on transfers. We know last year it was a big one for Liverpool, over £400 million being spent. It wasn't the season Liverpool wanted, obviously not competing for the Premier League. You kind of go through that Liverpool team and lots of additions are needed, I think. A right back, a couple of central midfield players, another wide player is needed at Liverpool. Big money was spent last summer. Do you think Liverpool are in a similar position to spend big money again this summer, or will they need to be a little bit more shrewd if necessary?
Not necessarily shrewd, but we're in an inflated market and Liverpool will be disciplined. And I think they're waiting in many ways for the World Cup to die down in the hope that this crazy Premier League market suddenly offers a little bit more value for money. And even doing deals outside, people are pointing to what Premier League clubs are spending, and it can be problematic. Let's not forget, though, Jeremy Jacquet was a pre-agreement and Victor Munoz was kind of a hijack away from Newcastle United. So two have come in. Number one priority is to replace Mo Salah. Bradley Barcola is high in Liverpool's thinking.
Is that doable?
It's doable if PSG sign Yan Diomande from Leipzig and or Magnus Kliush. And then it opens the door for Barcola to leave, because at the moment Barcola has no inclination to sign a new deal at PSG. But again, you're looking at $100 million plus deal. Some would say that's great value for money, but what if it becomes 120 or 140? And Liverpool know that timing is everything. And my expectation with Barcola is that Liverpool are playing it like they did with Florian Wirtz, where there was noise originally about Bayern and then Manchester City, and Liverpool discreetly just went about their business. And there was a funny story actually told by Jurgen Klopp at the World Cup, where he said Liverpool tried to sign Kylian Mbappe, but they had to meet Kylian Mbappe privately. So they went in a jet, they flew around in the air for half an hour, they wined and dined, they made their pitch, and no one ever knew the meeting happened. And this is sometimes how Liverpool work, under the radar. So don't be surprised if things are moving on the Barcola side, even though timing is everything. There's no guarantee he leaves, but if he is to depart, I expect Liverpool to be there. And let's see if Arsenal are as well. Midfield could be an area that Liverpool look at if Curtis Jones goes to Inter or elsewhere. Alexis McAllister has got a question mark over his future, so Liverpool might be in the market for a central midfielder.
Has any names there?
Nothing yet. They were linked historically with Adam Wharton, but my understanding is that deal is not progressing at this stage. I'd also say that Liverpool are confident, if Jones is still a member of the squad post-window, that he'll be integrated as part of the leadership team and may even be offered a new deal. And then perhaps they don't have as much urgency to sign a new midfielder. Alisson Becker is expected to stay despite interest from both Juventus in the early part of the window and more recently in Saudi Arabia. And right back, as you say, is fascinating because they've looked in the past, they may look again, even a backup left back. So Kostas Tsimikas wants to stay and fight for his place. If that happens, no problem. If it doesn't for any reason, then don't forget Andy Robertson departs as well. And on the right-hand side, there's big faith in both Conor Bradley and Jeremy Frimpong, but each of them had injuries and were in and out of the side last season, so it could still be an area that they look at.
Ben, thank you. Let's go back to the Winter Gardens as the Wild Match Play Round 2 is underway this evening. There's live commentary right now on talkSPORT 2. But Ian Danter's got the latest for us. Dance, we've already had our first result of the evening.
We have, Sam. Thank you very much. Gary Anderson is through to the quarterfinals. The number 12 seed sorted out the number 5 seed, Johnny Clayton, beating him by 11 legs to 7. He was 4-1 down, Anderson, at the first comfort break, but then roared back to win 10 of the next 13 legs to go through to the last 8. And even though he won it in 2018, his record at getting to the quarterfinals since then has not been great, just once in 8 attempts, but he's there again. And the second match is underway tonight. Dirk van Duijvenbode up against Michael van Gerwen in an all-Dutch affair. It's 3-2 to MVG, the 3-time match play champion, at the first interval. It's a first to 11 that goes through. Later tonight, Luke Littler, the defending champion, takes on Nathan Aspinall, and Josh Rock of Northern Ireland against Stephen Bunting to round off the evening. And as you say, Sam, every dart, every checkout, every finish is live on your home of darts on the radio. That is talkSPORT 2 right now.
Good work, Ian Danter. Very much recommending everyone to go and get that talkSPORT app, and you can flick between all of your favourite stations. It is the Transfer Insiders. We are on talkSPORT with you until 9 o'clock. We'll talk more Chelsea between now and 9, and after this break, Ben Jacobs has got some breaking news regarding Ipswich Town.
What does the future hold for Rashford? My understanding is that he ideally would still like to leave United, still not particularly happy with the hierarchy there over the circumstances of his departure this time last year. And while there is a slim chance that Michael Carrick reintegrates him into his first team squad, I think United ideally would like to sell as well. In my notebook on the talkSPORT website today, I talk about Fenerbahce in Turkey being interested, but Rashford doesn't seem particularly keen on that move. It all feels a little bit like limbo, Kev.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think it was the same last year, and you know, he come up trumps with the Barcelona move. Where did that come from last season? And you think, oh, go there, and then you have the season, and was he up and down? You sort of got mixed reviews, didn't you, from there, and whether they were going to then, you know, take him on this year and sign him. But I think probably the biggest block and the stumbling block for himself is the actual money they're going to have to give him. You know, and I think that's the problem. Do Man United want to go, you know, okay, we'll let him leave, but, you know, and take a hit on his wages and pay half of his wages so they can get him out. I think that's what they probably had to do in the last couple of seasons when he went to Villa and now Barcelona. So, yeah, it's all a bit of a mess, isn't it, considering, you know, being a Manchester boy, you don't really like to see it, but it's all really a bit of a mess, and I don't really see an outcome, and where it's going to get an outcome. I think it's someone's going to have to give, and I don't know which one's going to go first.
Well, they've already given his squad number away because Mateus Cunhas took his number 10 shirt last summer. So
well, that says it all from Michael as well, and his squad and his staff and everything else, that, you know, they see him that he probably won't be there, or he's someone who will be leaving.
When you think about famous F1 circuits, the likes of Silverstone, Monza, Monaco come to mind. One of these is not like the others though. Monaco is just one of a number of street circuits on the calendar, and that number's only set to rise. There's a clear difference between a traditional circuit and a street circuit. One is a purpose-built facility on private land, the other is, as it sounds, a race through the streets of a major city. Monaco is the famous example, twisting and turning through the streets of the Principality with iconic backgrounds and, let's be honest, not a lot of overtaking. But from 2026, there'll be a
A very good evening. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders. We are on talkSPORT. It is Sam Ellard and talkSPORT's football correspondent / transfer guru / pretty much everything, Ben Jacobs, with you until 10 o'clock. Some breaking news regarding Ipswich Town, who have been very busy, Ben.
Yes, so 2 signings confirmed. One is Issa Diop from Fulham, and that is worth 8.5 million. And then Abdul Fattari a few hours ago now was confirmed. This was another deal that we revealed on talkSPORT, joining from Leicester City. And I can tell you it's a 5-year contract, and the fee for Fattari is 20 million fixed plus 3 million in add-ons. And then some news just reaching me on Nottingham Forest as well. It's feeling a bit like deadline day this evening.
Oh,
Nottingham Forest have made an approach to Sporting for centre-back Usman Diomande. The interest is driven, according to sources, by Oliver Glasner. That makes a lot of sense because Glasner also wanted Diomande in previous windows when he was manager at Crystal Palace. Now, Sporting sources tell me that the player has a release clause of 80 million euros and that they are yet to receive a formal bid, but Forest sources tell me that they have tabled a verbal offer in the region of 32 million pounds.
Ben, thank you. From players to managers, the managerial merry-go-round. Just sticking with Nottingham Forest. I know this obviously isn't a new story, but maybe some of our listeners this evening won't have known all the ins and outs of this one. But one of the more kind of unique managerial kind of sackings or parting of the ways, if you like, was involving Nottingham Forest earlier this summer with Vitor Pereira.
Yeah, a crazy story that saw Oliver Glasner come in, Evangelos Marinakis not afraid to make a change when he feels it's necessary. And yet Vitor Pereira had done a superb job. The only other thing he could have done was beaten Villa in that semi-final of the Europa League and then maybe gone on and got Champions League football, but it was a tall order. And Vitor Pereira, when he came in with Forest floundering and in a relegation battle, signed a 2-season deal. But in the contract, there was a termination clause that expired at the end of June. And Vitor Pereira, according to my information, a talkSPORT exclusive, was speaking to the club on the morning that he would end up being dismissed via this clause about pre-season and about transfers. And I revealed that one of the topics of conversation was an exhibition tournament in Udine against Udinese and Barcelona. And subsequently, a few days ago, Nottingham Forest confirmed their participation in that. So Pereira thought he would be on the plane and involved in all of this. And at 11:58 p.m., 1 minute before the clause was valid, 2 minutes before the clause expired, Nottingham Forest sent an email to Pereira telling him that its time at Nottingham Forest had come to an end. And of course, part of the reason why was because they'd lined up Oliver Glasner.
So sure, I understand that Glasner could have been made available, on that day, and things like that moved quite quickly. But sending the email at 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before this clause, this termination clause, is no longer valid, would I be cynical when thinking that maybe there was a bit of bad blood there somewhere? Because it almost feels a little bit spiteful, doesn't it? Firstly, to do it at that time, and second, to do it at 11:58 p.m.
I'm not aware of bad blood. I think it was maybe just a lack of communication, and ultimately Evangelos Marinakis makes decisions. He personally negotiated the Elliot Anderson deal to Manchester City. He got his asking price. He's a shrewd businessman, but sometimes decisions are taken independently, and then by the time they're relayed to the lawyers and things like that, time can run out. So Vitor Pereira came out and said there was no bad blood. He's not bitter about it.
I'd be, by the way, if I got that email 2 minutes before the clause had expired, I'd be absolutely fuming.
He was surprised, but remember, Vitor Pereira had worked with Evangelos Marinakis before, so he knew what he was.
He knows what
into.
he's like. Yeah.
But the surprise in all of this was that about 4 weeks earlier, Forest sources had indicated that they planned to offer Pereira a new deal, and that never materialised.
But you just think the Glasner situation, he obviously was available, and you think they just had a change of heart and that escalated everything to happen?
My sense is that Milan were talking to Glasner, and at one point in time prior to Ruben Amorim getting that job, they were confident, and the direction of travel was Glasner to move outside of the Premier League because Leverkusen were another suitor. Suddenly Amorim and Milan is the one that develops, and Glasner didn't have another option but was always open to staying in the Premier League. And the thing to understand is that Nottingham Forest project is highly ambitious. It might be a bit unorthodox at times, but they are building something, and that dates back to last season, which is why everyone was so disappointed to see them in a relegation battle, because two squads were effectively recruited, one for Europe, one for the Premier League, with depth. And Marinakis and Edu, who was driving the recruitment through that summer, felt essentially like this is a project that can win things. This is a team that can go far in Europe and get back those Brian Clough glory days. And this is a side when half the Premier League almost get European football that can again qualify for some kind of European football. And they spent accordingly, I think, a very risk-reward approach towards recruitment, only to find that it all went wrong. Pereira came in and filled in all of the holes, kept them up, but Glasner was just seen as the more long-term strategic.
You know what they should have done though, Ben, don't you? You know, the one thing they should have done, and maybe, who knows, maybe they'd be in the Champions League. They should have signed Adama Traore. They should have just got Adama Traore in for Nuno Espirito Santo, and who knows what might have happened.
There's a funny story there. So Edu and Nuno Espirito Santo were at loggerheads publicly, according to my information, and we reported this at the time, because Nuno Espirito Santo wanted Adama Traore as go-to player, and Edu's argument was that he tried and the player wasn't keen. Some sources close to Nuno Espirito Santo say they called the player and said, "You're not keen?" And the player went, "I've not even been told you're interested." So there's two sides to that story, but either way, it didn't happen.
And then from Nuno to, I mean, the Ange Postecoglou being Forest manager, that feels like it happened 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that it happened last season.
And also, he lasted 10 minutes.
Yeah. Was it 26 days, 24 days? A little bit longer than 10 minutes, but yeah, not a long time. In terms of the managerial merry-go-round, I think one thing that's quite intriguing next season, Ben, in the Premier League, is of the traditional top six. 5 of those clubs have a new manager or a manager that joined during last season. So all except Arsenal, Liverpool with Iraola, Chelsea, Xavi Alonso, Man City, Enzo Maresca, Man United, Michael Carrick, Tottenham, Roberto De Zerbi. In terms of elsewhere, I mentioned Forest have got a new manager, Oliver Glasner. Of course, Fulham got a new manager, Alvaro Arbeloa. So too Bournemouth and Palace and Config Ipswich as well. Coming up to the Premier League, Gary O'Neill is in there now. Kieran McKenna no longer there. Of kind of all of those many teams who have got new managers or newish managers from sort of joining halfway through last season. Who are you most intrigued by next season?
Yeah, Arbeloa and Alonso, and they meet each other in the first game too. So that's going to be absolutely fascinating. Alonso just feels like a fit for Chelsea, and the same with Arbeloa and Fulham, especially if they back him in the market. Gary O'Neill, safe pair of hands. Ipswich were hoping that ultimately Kieran McKenna signed a new contract, but he wanted to take a break. We mustn't forget that managers are human as well, and it was more a personal decision rather than a football one. And then more broadly, you just look at the fact that if we include Michael Carrick, even though obviously he's not brand new, but he's got the job on a long-term deal heading into this season, you've got everyone from the so-called Big Six, except for Arsenal, that have made a managerial change. And we had that crazy New Year period where they all just started to fall, with New Year's Day, Enzo Maresca, Ruben Amorim going in early January as well, Thomas Frank getting sacked too. And you feel like if you're Arsenal, they're the stable project. They'll feel best positioned to defend their title, but they've not done enough yet in the market. If you're the other teams, you would say Chelsea and Spurs in particular are going to improve under their new managers. And Michael Carrick has got continuity, but can he balance the workload of having Champions League football? It's a great problem to have. So I think if Arsenal were not so good last season, we'd be saying this is the most unpredictable Premier League title race. And then Enzo Maresca knows Man City so well, but can he ultimately live up to expectation, filling extremely big Pep Guardiola-shaped shoes?
Yeah, no pressure there, Mr. Maresca. No pressure there. It is the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs with you until 10. We're going to turn our attention back to Chelsea next. Morgan Rogers, we're expecting that deal to be announced some point this evening. Ben also informed us earlier on the show about Chelsea being interested in Alex Scott, Max Lacroix, possibly John Stones as well. A man that's been very critical of Chelsea's recruitment policy. Big Chelsea fan Louis Benavente, he's with us next and he's in the studio. Good evening. You're listening to the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT. Sam Ellard, Ben Jacobs with you until 10 o'clock this evening. The World Match Play. We're into round 2 this evening. Live commentary on talkSPORT 2. And Ian Danter, is Michael van Gerwen under a bit of pressure?
Certainly is. Second interval sees Dirk van Dijvenbode, his Dutch compatriot, 6-4 up in a race to 11. It was 3-2 to Van Gerwen at the first comfort break, but Van Dijvenbode has posted a 1-2-8 checkout, and Van Gerwen has looked nervous as well at times on the outer ring. It's not been the best part of his game for a little while for MVG. So Van Dijvenbode, who disposed of a seed in the first round in Chris Dobie, is trying to double the dose here. He needs 5 more legs to go through. Gary Anderson already through to the quarterfinals after he beat Johnny Clayton in tonight's first match. Still to come, live on talkSPORT 2, Nathan Aspinall against Luke Littler, the defending champion, and Josh Rock of Northern Ireland. He's up against Stephen Bunting to round off the evening. So go to talkSPORT 2 if you want live exclusive commentary of all of tonight's action at Winter Gardens here in Blackpool.
Cheers, Dan. Let's now turn our attention back to Chelsea. Not a great season last year, finishing 10th in the Premier League. Lots of money has been spent over the last few years. And I mean, when I say lots, we're talking billions. But a lot of Chelsea fans would argue not too much of that has been spent wisely. But Chelsea getting off to a pretty good start to the summer when they appointed Xabi Alonso as their new manager. But certainly the transfer market is where fans want to see a shift. Less buying young players with potential and more go and sign ready-made players who are ready to come in right now and have an immediate impact. And that leads me on very nicely to the Chelsea podcast, Louis Benavente, who's with me in the studio. Because, Louis, good evening, mate. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We spend lots of afternoons together working on talkSPORT goals. And I think it's fair to say you are a man who hasn't been particularly happy with the hierarchy and their, how should we put it, they're working the transfer window. Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I say, look, we've had this conversation loads of times on goals. I mean, I have not been impressed with how Chelsea have done things over the past years. I mean, Ben and I also had a couple of conversations about it in the past. Yeah,
off the record or on the record?
On the record. It was like when we've done a couple of pod shows together.
I thought it was a bit weird when you came in and Ben just didn't look at you.
Yeah, no, I know. It was a little bit ominous in the air, wasn't it, Ben?
Yeah.
But I mean, look, like,
just don't fight, please.
It's all right. We're separated.
Yeah,
you're in the middle, mate. You're fine.
Yeah. I thought it was weird that you're sat to my right, not next to Ben, which is normally where the guest sits. But yeah.
No, but yeah, it's not been great. But I mean, look, today, last few days has looked good. Looking good is not delivering. We have to sort of see what happens over the next few months. I mean, we could talk about teams that have, won the transfer window, as it were, over the past few years, and I don't think any of them have performed. So I'm not going to sit here and say Chelsea are winning any transfer windows because, one, I think that's a ridiculous statement to make, but two, I think Chelsea need a lot of work to sort of regain the trust of the fans. But I mean, Morgan Rogers, a great deal, a player which, big clubs are after, someone who can make a massive difference straight away. Obviously, there's the registered interest in John Stones as well. Alejandro Garnacho is going out the door, whether it's a loan with an obligation, we don't know how it looks. Obviously, Ben, that's your area of expertise. But look, overall, I think it's been pretty good so far. And Anthony Taylor's retired. So it's been a great day for me.
I knew you were going to mention that as well. Yeah. I saw Chelsea fans say, greatest day of all time. Anthony Taylor's retired and no more Alejandro Garnacho.
It was great. I was dancing. It was great.
Let's turn our attention away from Morgan Rogers. I mean, Ben confirmed at the top of the show that we're expecting that deal to possibly be officially confirmed this evening.
Well, it's not what I said. Let's be clear here. 6 + 1 year contract signed. We don't want to steal the club's thunder here. No. So we don't know when they're going to announce it, but there's nothing stopping them.
Sure. Could be this evening. We said it could be this evening, possibly. Ben, for people maybe just joining us, other Chelsea players they've been linked with, and plenty of them today, Alex Scott, Max Lacroix, and even John Stones as well?
Yeah, so John Stones is an option and would be experienced and available as a free agent. I think Stones is going to look long and hard after the World Cup because he may have opportunities where he can start every single week. Chelsea want a starting centre-back, and my feeling is things are moving with Maxence Lacroix. And this is another one of those deals like Morgan Rogers that's going to be done at ownership level. And Steve Parish must decide, is he prepared to sell a player with 3 years left on his contract? You can understand from the Palace perspective, whether rightly or wrongly, you've got Jan-Paul van Hecke, 52 million, 1 year left on his contract, goes to Spurs. Of course, Palace are going to ask for more than that. So Chelsea also have to determine whether they can meet halfway and they see value for money. Personally, I think a player of that caliber and fit and physicality and height that Chelsea are looking for is somebody that would be a very strong fit. You've got Pep Chavaria, talks are ongoing there. There's a few points to note. One is Chelsea were told 15 million will do it, so they bid 15 million, and then Rayo Vallecano asked for more. Two is suggestions the release clause is 21.5 million euros. Incorrect to my understanding. I'm told the release clause is over 40 million euros. So Rayo Vallecano have got a little bit more leverage. Midfield, also a possibility. We revealed on talkSPORT earlier that Chelsea made a recent bid for Alex Scott and it was turned away, and it was over £60 million. Louis kind of wincing and nodding his head. So I'll stop there and ask you, one, do Chelsea need strengthening midfield? And two, are you Team Enzo stay or Team Enzo go?
I think Alex Scott's an interesting case. He's had a very good season with Bournemouth, but there are other players out there that I think might be a better fit. I think if we've got someone who can... I'll always look at, if we come to a 3-4-3, which realistically what it looks like we're going to be playing, I don't see Alex Scott as someone for that double pivot space, nor do I see Enzo Fernandez as that player. Further forward, we seem to have an abundance of options now. Enzo Fernandez, you kind of have to shoehorn him in to get him into the system. If Chelsea keep him and Xabi Alonso wants to, then I'll be interested to see how that all works out. I'm not sure he's the right player for that. Alex Scott's the same. I think there's better players you can get for £60 million in that space as well.
Camavinga reunion?
I mean, I'd love Camavinga. I think that'd be a great signing, having him alongside Moises Caicedo. You look at that team that won the league under Conte. It had the steel of Nemanja Matic and someone who could sit and distribute short or long to the wing backs or to further forward up the pitch. And Kante mopping up. I see Caicedo as a kind of player to mop up. We just need someone to sit next to him now to make the difference. Enzo Fernandez, I'm probably in the minority here. But if an offer came in for him from Real Madrid that was the right price, I wouldn't say no. I think he's been all right for Chelsea, but I think for me, and it's not because of what happened in the England-Argentina game, but it kind of hit home in that game for me. Sort of, we don't have the same player at Chelsea that you see for Argentina. I think when Enzo sits deep for Argentina, he plays. It's a little bit like the Pogba Man United complex. You know, you look at when he played for France, he was unbelievable wherever you played him, surrounded by better players as well. I think is another way to look at it in case of his Manchester United past. But Enzo Fernandez may be a similar situation where I just don't think his heart is in it as much, which is fine. Completely understand that. It's his country. He loves Argentina. But, I mean, he's been angling for a move. I'm not sure if he wants to be there. If that's the case, then, you know, right offer comes in, I take it and reinvest.
In terms of defence and goalkeeper, I was quite adamant at the start of last season that Chelsea needed to go out and sign an experienced, proven centre-back to come in and lead quite a young bunch of centre-backs that Chelsea had. And that was before Levi Colwill got injured. I was also quite adamant that I thought Robert Sanchez needed to be replaced. To be fair to Robert Sanchez, I actually thought he had a decent season last year. But in terms of that centre-back and goalkeeper, Ben mentioned Max Lacroix. Is he a player that you'd like?
I like Max Lacroix. And again, if it's a perfect system for him, if it was two centre-backs, unsure. But in a back three, I think he'd really flourish. However, as soon as he's coming up on the screen now, actually, ironically, as we start to win, John Stone, as soon as he was mentioned, my heart's just gone. I'd love to have him at Chelsea. He is very much, if you look at the mould of maybe Chelsea just before Abramovich, you had Marcel Desailly, Frank Leboeuf, these sort of players that are seasoned veterans that know exactly what they're doing. It's what, as you and I have discussed on multitude occasions, exactly what Chelsea need. So if there was an opportunity to get both, I wouldn't say no. I think the problem you've got both is you've got Josh Achimpong, who is they're saying is ready to play. Would he get his opportunities at Chelsea still? So, you know, there's a lot of questions to be raised there because he's someone who is really highly valued and highly sort of within the world of football and is someone who I think would definitely make a massive difference at Chelsea in the next few years. But yeah, definitely Maxence Lacroix, I really like him as a player and I think he would really make a difference in this team.
Is it more important that they find all of these stars and when you list them on paper, of course, you think Rodgers left, Esteval right, Palmer central, João Pedro leading the line, World Cup winner in Enzo Fernandez, best midfielder in the world, Moises Caicedo, Reece James on his day and fit, best right back in the world. It's a shame they lost Marc Cucurella. They still need to address that side, but Palestra's come in and can play on the left-hand side. Levi Colwill, one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League. Sign someone like Lacroix, put them in a back four there, but you get the point. And then if it turns out Mike Penders is as good as, for example, in the next few years, Sene Lammens, they've got a goalkeeper there. And yet I think back to, I believe it was the Everton game where several players were bickering over a penalty in a match that Chelsea had already won. Do you think what might change this summer is Chelsea not, and I mentioned this earlier on the show, sign footballers only, but find the right characters as well.
I think that's the most important thing. We can always talk about the spreadsheets that Blue Kai have used and the data, and that's a lot of sexy things for people. But for me, it comes down to the heart and the mentality of some of these players, and I don't think Chelsea have had it over the past few years. I mean, they've grown a lot since the Everton game. That was in the Pochettino season.
That was embarrassing, wasn't it?
It was awful.
That's when you were 4-0 up on a Monday night against Everton.
Yeah.
And was it Jackson Madueke trying to steal the ball off Cole Palmer?
Yeah, and then you had Conor Gallagher trying to break it all up. It was wild, to say the least. But in their defence, which there isn't really much to it in that, Pochettino hadn't taken hold of that situation where he was kind of saying, you guys can decide who takes the penalties. Xabi Alonso doesn't strike me as that sort of character. I mean, I'm not going to lie. We're talking about signing midfielders. I mean, seeing some of those training videos, can we just give him a player-manager contract and stick him in?
No, really.
He looks
get him back.
So good.
He can still ping, yeah?
Yeah, he can. But, I mean, look, I think overall, for me, I look at the situation with Chelsea, those characters can be really important. And the names that have been mentioned over the past few days, again, like I said at the top, it's great over the past few days. It's great. But we could be having the same conversations that we've been having for the past 2 years in 6 months' time. And I don't want to be doing that. So hopefully, based on what we've been seeing, Chelsea will be adapting and changing.
And just last one briefly, you would have had more time if you turned up on time. Those tubes and trains in London Bridge can be an absolute nightmare.
Here at 1:30. I was here.
Oh, okay. Oh, not what I was told. Forget about all the players that could possibly be coming in. I maybe think the best bit of business of any sort that we could see any team do in this transfer window is Chelsea signing Xabi Alonso.
Could be. It could be.
You don't seem as optimistic as I am about how I think he'll do at Chelsea.
I think he can do really well, but there's a lot for him to work through in terms of the bureaucracy and the way that Chelsea's been run for the past 4 or 5 years. That's not going to be fixed in 6 months. So let's see. It's hopefully something where we can see Chelsea move in the right direction. I think, look, if Rodgers comes in, John Stones, Maxwell Lacroix, I'm going to be looking at this team and going, okay, well, top 4 is a minimum. How close we can get with no European football to the top of the table will be a good barometer, but only time will tell.
I, as a non-Chelsea fan, I'm a bit worried about Chelsea next season. As Ben was listing that 11, I was like, oh my goodness me, lots and lots of good players. Louis, thank you very much for joining us. The next part of the show is really, really simple because we've had dozens of texts, Ben, from many, many people up and down the country asking lots of questions about this player and that club. I'm going to put them all to you in the next part of the show. If you want to ask Ben a question, talkSPORT Transfer Guru, 1889 on the texts, and I'm asking Ben all these fan questions next.
I watched a lot of Marcus Rashford at Barcelona. I think it was a successful loan, Jeff. He played 43 times in the league and Champions League together, 13 goals, 10 assists. I'm just surprised teams haven't bid for him. I don't understand the Gordon transfer. I really don't. I feel Rashford is a better option than Gordon. He's 28. Is it the wages? Are we looking at someone that maybe his contract, if he's got a year left at Manchester United, the wages are too much for clubs to maybe sign him on a 4-year deal? Is he getting closer to that 30 mark as well? The contract will be something really strange going on there. But whoever signs him has got a fantastic player because he looks like he's in a better mind frame as well. I look at him before the World Cup. He's at Inter Miami doing extra training. At Barcelona, we hear nothing negative about Marcus Rashford. He's in a better headspace being away from Manchester. So if I'm him and I'm his agent, does he look at another club abroad to get away from any distractions that he might have back at home?
Do you think he may have to settle for another loan deal?
It's hard, isn't it? Because will Manchester United accept that? Because he's got a year left.
They may not have any options.
I know. Does this come down to the end of August, Jeff? End of the transfer window? And maybe it has to be because I just don't see him playing for Manchester United again. One, Manchester United, the players that they've brought in, he doesn't fit into that team. And also, as a player, I know it might not be much to a lot of people, but he's lost his number. Cunha took his number. I don't think he's going to come back and be like, okay, I'll wear this number now and I'll be a bit part player. I think Marcus Rashford and Manchester United's relationship is done.
Corinthian Casuals are a team in the Combined Counties League Premier Division South. Despite that, they're one of the most important clubs in world football. Here's why. The club was formed in 1939 as the result of a merger between Corinthians FC and Casuals FC. Now, Corinthians FC were founded in the late 1800s when the FA's top brass were sick of getting pumped by Scotland every time they played them. As a result, a man called Nicholas Lane Jackson set up an amateur side which would bring in the best players who could all play for the national side. And it worked. It wasn't long before England were dominating the international fixtures they played, and it was largely down to Corinthians. In fact, in 1894 and 1895, they played consecutive games where Corinthians provided the entire England 11. But the thing is, the players refused to play professional football. They didn't believe in it. They wanted to spread the values of sportsmanship, competition, and played for the love of the game. It also helped that most of the players were Oxbridge graduates who didn't need the money. But instead of entering the league and cup competitions, they played exhibition football and toured the world, bringing the beautiful game with them. And it was this which spread the game throughout the world and made it so popular. Most famously, in 1910, they travelled to Brazil. And the locals in Sao Paulo were so impressed, they started their own team under the same name. Yes, the same Corinthians who won the FIFA Club World Cup in 2021, one of the biggest football teams in Brazil. Now, they were global superstars, and despite not being professional, Corinthians drew in the crowds. Everybody wanted to play them, everybody wanted to watch them. So much so, they regularly played the winners of the FA Cup in what eventually became the Community Shield, winning most of the time. They actually inflicted Manchester United's worst defeat, 11-3, a record which still stands to this day. Now, fast forward to today, Corinthian Casuals still don't pay their staff or players. The ethos of sportsmanship is still at the heart of everything that they do. And even though they're a side in the lower leagues, if you make the trip to King George's Field in Tolworth just off the A3, you'll most likely bump into Brazilian Corinthians fans who often make the pilgrimage across the globe just to watch their founding team play.
A very good evening. It is just gone 9 o'clock on Tuesday, July the 21st. It is the Transfer Insiders back on talkSPORT, the first show of the summer with you for a lot of weekdays between 7 and 10 o'clock between now and the end of the transfer window. Well, this part of the show is quite a straightforward one because, Ben, we have had lots and lots of texts from various people over the last couple of hours with questions they want me to ask you. So let's try and get through as many as we can in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Louis Smith says, Ben, what's the latest with Liverpool and Barcola? Doesn't seem to be much happening at Liverpool at the minute.
Yeah, as we said before, it's not moving because it's all about PSG, and if they sign Yandir Mande and or Magnus Akliouche, it unlocks the possibility that Barcola leaves for in excess of £100 million. Liverpool, an appreciation from Arsenal as well. And remember, a key part in this story is Barcola wanting to start and Barcola having been unwilling for months to sign a new deal at PSG. So no guarantee he leaves. and yet timing could be everything here. And if PSG succeed in getting one or both of those signings over the line, then Liverpool are prepared to move.
Okay, no name on this text, but it says talkSPORT. Is there any Manchester United fullback news? I think it's very important that we improve in these areas. Of course, United have been active in the midfield market. You expecting them to strengthen our right and left back?
Yeah, they've looked at Marcus Tavernier before, who's kind of very versatile player, not just at fullback. You've got Lewis Hall, appreciation there, nothing more at this stage. Hall could also, by the way, end up signing a new deal at Newcastle United. Anthony Robinson is another player that Manchester United appreciate. No bid or offer yet. And the reason why they haven't moved yet in that position is because they want to sort out a third midfielder, and they'll have to define if Patrick Dorgu is a more advanced player or he's also covering that position. And I'd add as well, I'm told there's a lot of faith and a lot of excitement about Diego Leon, who's a young option over at fullback and a player that over the course of the coming seasons we'll hopefully see more of.
Okay, nice. D has sent in, Sam and Ben, big fan of the show. I'm really enjoying it. A question for Ben, please. What other deals do you expect in the Saudi Pro League this window? Here we go, Ben.
So Crescencio Somerville has already verbally at least agreed to join Al Hilal, and that's fascinating. One, because Richard Hughes will end up there in likelihood, and two, because Simon Francis, the former Bournemouth technical director, is already working for Al Hilal. Then we have Al Ittihad, who need a striker because they lost Karim Benzema to Al Hilal in the January window. And they're starting to assess the market now and see whether there's any Premier League players available. Jean-Philippe Mateta is a historical target. I'm not aware of anything developing at the moment. You've got Al Ittifaq, who used to be managed by Steven Gerrard, and Al Shabab, two of the slightly smaller clubs, but there's budget there. And they've both been looking at Joe Willock, and yet the feeling is that Willock and a move to Turkey might be the plot line to watch over the course of the coming days. Newcastle are prepared to sell.
We did touch on Chelsea before 9, but Anthony's texted in and said, hi Ben, big Chelsea fan here, really happy with the Rodgers signing, but curious to know if any business happening for the goalkeeper. Do you think it's likely we're going to stick with Robert Sanchez?
Yeah, and part of the reason why is not because Sanchez only had a much more consistent season last campaign, but also because of Mike Penders. Now, if Liam Rossini was still the Chelsea manager, we might be talking about Penders being thrown straight in at the deep end. Instead, I expect Sanchez to begin as the number one and then Penders to be assessed. And the excellent nature of the window, like it or loathe it, overlapping with the beginning of the Premier League season, is Alonso can do pre-season, keep calm about his goalkeepers, but there's still always time for a twist potentially. But for now, I'm told that there's big faith in Mike Penders, and the most likely scenario is Rob Sanchez to begin as number one and Philip Jorgensen to be sold.
Okay, Rob has texted on 1889 saying, any transfer news for Hull City, please, Ben? We know that Hull had an incredible season last year where they, well, the year before last, nearly got relegated down to League One. Fast forward 12 months, promotion to the Premier League. Any incomings likely?
An unbelievable story, and I refer you to the talkSPORT website where we've got an exclusive interview with the Hull City owner, and he says, and I quote, "It's a busy week ahead. Think of us like a volcano. It's boiling now and it's going to erupt." And the situation is Hull have already signed from Maribor Oscar Zambrano. And in addition, as we revealed on talkSPORT, Matt Targett, ex-Newcastle United, is also expected to join. There's already a verbal agreement in place there.
Leon Bailey as well, I think might be another
Links
name.
to, and there's ongoing talks there. And I think Hull holds some confidence, although Bailey, again, is a player for 4 windows now, if we include the January ones, that's had interest from Saudi and Italy as well. But Hull are certainly in talks.
Okay, Dean's texting, wants to know about Nottingham Forest, please, Ben. What can you look out for in terms of any incomings in Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, so 2 things to tell you. The first is, in case you missed it earlier on the show, Nottingham Forest have made an approach to Sporting for centre-back Ousmane Diomande. That's been driven by Oliver Glasner. 80 million euros release clause. Sporting sources tell me this evening, no formal bid. And yet I'm told by Nottingham Forest the numbers discussed are in and around £40 million. And then the big one potentially is Lucas Bergvall, who's asked to leave Tottenham Hotspur. Both Newcastle and Nottingham Forest have bid there. And as we revealed on talkSPORT, Bergvall is Nottingham Forest's number 1 target to replace Elliot Anderson.
Just got, I've got people just texting in just the name of football clubs, just Spurs, Arsenal, Man United, Newcastle. So I'm not sure where you want to go next, but maybe let's do the Premier League champions, Arsenal, who in the last couple of hours we haven't actually touched on in too much detail. What do you think will be Arsenal's approach between now and the end of the transfer window?
Not to panic. So with Morgan Rogers, it looks like Arsenal dilly-dallied and Chelsea swooped in and agreed the deal in 48 hours. And I can understand why people might paint it that way, but my information is that Arsenal made it clear they wanted 80 million to do Morgan Rogers. And if it was any higher, they were going to walk away. And then with no real panic, when Chelsea bid and had an accepted offer of 117 million, Arsenal had the chance to match it and they said no. Other targets, potentially Bradley Barcola. Julian Alvarez is the dream target, and maybe Atletico Madrid are more inclined to do business with a non-La Liga side, and in particular not engage with
What sort of fee would that be, though, do you reckon, to get him out?
Well, there's release clause 500 million euros, but my information is that there are provisions for certain Champions League clubs to do it cheaper, but cheaper is still probably out of the price range of all clubs, because even if it was in and around 150 million euros, under set provisions, you got to pay the taxes as well. So that would bump up the deal considerably, which is why nobody's really looking at triggering the release clause of Julian Alvarez, whether at 500 million euros or lower. But Berta will know the ins and outs of that deal, because don't forget he brought him to Atletico Madrid. So maybe Alvarez stays. That is what Atletico Madrid say publicly. Maybe Barca come back in post-World Cup. But don't rule out Arsenal. If there's a 1% chance of Julian Alvarez moving to the Emirates Stadium, Arsenal will move. Then Jan Diamande's been discussed, but the challenge is Arsenal want left side, and Diamande wants to play predominantly on the right. You have Junior Krupi. Bournemouth, like with Alex Scott, don't want to sell. So there are other options there. And then, like we discussed on the show, I think right at the very top in a Newcastle United chat in the first hour, Bruno Guimaraes and Arsenal is also accelerating.
And we'll do one more, shall we? Let's go to Amir from Burnley, who says Burnley seem to be losing players who would probably thrive in the Championship in Esteve and Anthony. Any rumours on any quality players coming in at Turf Moor? A few have left. Have you heard anything on or any potential incomings at Burnley?
Yeah, it's been a little bit difficult, hasn't it, for Burnley? My understanding is that they will still be busy in the market, and we'll have to wait and see whether they can get anybody over the line. Burnley have held some talks with a defensive midfielder called Rag Huber, who came originally through at Lille, and it's ongoing at the moment as to whether that is going to come off or not. Lille are going to be focused on Ayoub Bouadi and Manchester City as another possible exit. And do they want to lose two of their midfielders and most promising prospects in the same window? But maybe the difference is that Bouadi could be a situation where they price them out of the market. If Man City want Bouadi, it has to be 100 million euros or so now, otherwise a pre-agreement. And if there was to be a pre-agreement for Bouadi and he didn't move until summer 2027, then it could open the door for other players also in central midfield to leave. The other thing about Rag Huber is that he's 23 years of age, so a little bit older. And my information is that Burnley are progressing with that deal.
Nice, good stuff. Thank you all for those texts. Try to get through as many as possible. In the next part of the show, what I would love to do, Ben, is we've spent 2 and a bit hours talking about transfers. I obviously appreciate, as someone with contacts in the transfer guy, you can't just come on here and reveal everything and tell us how you get these stories. But I'm going to try, because I find it interesting. I'm sure some of our listeners find it interesting as well, to try and dive deep into sort of, how you and kind of your colleagues go about trying to get information and build contacts. So try and go a little bit behind the scenes and get into the mind of Ben Jacobs. That's next on the Transfer Insiders, and we're on talkSPORT.
Let's talk about this story doing the rounds overnight about Pep Guardiola and Italy. Italy, of course, not part of the World Cup jamboree. does raise the question, Kev, because we know now that there was a verbal agreement in place between the English FA and Pep Guardiola as recently as 2024. Obviously, that didn't quite happen in the end. If he is serious, Guardiola, about taking an international job, in the wake of that collapse against Argentina, is there an argument for the FA making a play now for Guardiola and deciding to pivot from Thomas Tuchel?
Yeah, look, I'd love nothing more than to see Pep in charge of our national team. And I think not only that, I think he'll give us something which will give us direction for not only just for the next 2 years, 4 years. He could help the FA within it. And, you know, I've been part of that. I know the culture and the DNA of what Thomas was talking about in last week and what they're trying to achieve. But I think Pep could add something different. I think he's got something, you know, he'll give us a style, he'll give us an identity of what he sees the game, how he sees it. And I think he'll be one who'll want to help everybody all down the line, if you like, the 21s, the 18s. I think he'll bring it all together so that it's all aligned and everything else, because I think that's probably what's needed now after Gareth and what he done, and was, you know, when everybody forgets a fantastic job what he done behind the scenes and everything else. We then went to Thomas to go and win us the trophy to get us over it. It hasn't happened. So if there's an opportunity now where our number one target of 2 years ago is available, and it's funny that his representatives have put this out that he's speaking to Italy now. Yeah. So does that say that he does want this?
Good evening, you're listening to the world's biggest sports radio station, talkSPORT, the Transfer Insiders with Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs with you until 10. We have to head back, though, to the Winter Gardens in Blackpool. Ian Dante, you're witnessing a Winter Gardens classic.
It's gone the way of Dirk van Duijvenbode in the Dutch encounter. He's knocked out the three-time match-play champion, Michael van Gerwen. He's won it 13-11 in the end. We thought we were destined for a sudden death leg, but van Duijvenbode got the job done with double 8. He was 8-4 up, and then van Gerwen reeled off 3 legs in a row, breathing down his neck at 8-7. Then it went to 10-8, only for van Gerwen to pull off a stunning 1-2-5 checkout bull, 25 bull that had the crowd on its feet in the Winter Gardens. But fair play to the Ober genius. He held his nerve and has got over the line to dispose of a second seed at these championships, having taken care of Chris Dobie in round 1. So the Titan is through. Next up, it is Luke Littler, the reigning champion, against Nathan Aspinall, and that game is coming up next live on your home of Dance on the Radio, talkSPORT 2.
Dance, clearly, obviously, Luke Littler is going to be the hot favourite to win this tournament. Seen a couple of upsets already. MVG been knocked out. We saw Luke Humphries being knocked out last night. If there is someone, maybe a dark horse to go deep and maybe meet Luke Littler in the final, is there anyone you like the look of?
Well, I mean, Aspinall posted a 105 average himself in getting through in round 1. So if he maintains that sort of form, that he's got a chance to give Luke Littler some problems. But over course and distance, Luke's just brilliant. So you've got to be looking at maybe somebody out the pack who might be able to. I mean, Vessel Nyman's an obvious pick, Sam, because he's won 6.
His floor form's been great, Dan, hasn't it?
His floor form's been brilliant. 6 Pro Tour titles on the floor and 2 European Tour titles. He's been excellent, and he disposed of his round 1 opponent in fairly easy fashion the other night, so that's potential. Jan van Veen looked a little bit better, the number 3 in the world. We keep forgetting about him. He's only, you know, just in behind Humphries and Littler in the world's top 2, so Van Veen could pose a problem. But let's see how he copes with the Asp here, and whether Nathan can provide the sort of form he showed here a couple of nights ago. But Luke, once he gets going, as you know, Sam, almost impossible to stop.
And his nicknames go down. It's the Ober Genius. Might be one of my favourites.
Yeah, it's up
for
there,
Dirk van Duijvenbode, eh?
It is up there. He's a combustible character, is Dirk van Dijvenbode. Quite complicated. He's fun to interview. I'll tell you that much. He's not a straightforward interview at all, and he's not a straightforward dart player. But when he gets it right, his big 180 hitting is his weapon, and he made that work for him tonight. So fair play to him.
That's good stuff. Chat to you a little bit later on. Live commentary continues on talkSPORT 2. Luke Littler, the world #1, the defending champion at the World Match Play, is in action in a matter of minutes. Ben, you have an update regarding Chelsea and Alex Scott.
Yeah, so another Alex Crook and myself broke an exclusive earlier, which was Chelsea had a recent approach for Alex Scott rebuffed by Bournemouth. Bournemouth don't want to sell. They're not even putting a public valuation on his head, even though maybe internally they value him about £80 million. And we said earlier that Chelsea were willing to pay over 60 million and Bournemouth said not for sale. Now I can bring you more detail on that exclusive story. Chelsea's rejected bid was worth £64 million.
Okay, interesting. Chelsea, £64 million bid was the initial one for Alex Scott at Bournemouth. How do you expect that potential deal to develop over the coming weeks, Ben?
I mean, maybe famous last words, but I think Scott might stay. I know people are reading into the lack of...
Is it 2 years on his deal, you said?
Yeah, he could, in theory, stay till summer 2027, have 1 year left, and as deals like Jan-Paul van Hekke show, 1 year left, you can still command a big fee, or you buy yourself a year to back up European football. Maybe the player signs a new deal. But the caveat is there's so much interest in Scott. Arsenal have looked, Manchester City have made an inquiry, Manchester United have had the player on their radar. But all of this in a perverse way, and sometimes it happens in a window, mean that Bournemouth know if they were to change their position, they've got a bidding war. And the irony of that is if they don't want to change their position, you use that bidding war to say, the price has to be astronomical, and in the end it might be a little bit too high for interested parties.
Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook will keep you up to date with any further developments on that transfer as well as many others. Ben, if I can just ask you, you're in a position here where I'm finding it great watching you work, by the way, because we're having a conversation on talkSPORT, but you've got a phone up, you've got your laptop up, you're working away. You've obviously got great contacts in sport. I mean, you were the man that broke the exclusive, weren't you? During the World Cup, that Donald Trump got involved with Infantino to get the Bellingham red card kind of rescinded. How are you sat here right now in this position? If there's a young journalist, listening to this right now who kind of wants to kind of follow in your footsteps as well as many other people, how do you kind of go about being in this position where you're able to break big transfer news?
Yeah, I think you have to have a process, and everyone's process is different, but the general rule of journalism is don't report the information, put scrutiny on the information.
What does that mean?
I think a lot of people think we just get given a line and out it goes. But if anyone tells me anything, I put scrutiny on it. I try and approach as many people as I know and all sides, and then you get balance. And if you've got dispute, you have to decide along with your editors or your colleagues that you work with, like Alex Crook, who we think is right, what we're prepared to run. So you spend a lot of time actually going back and forth to keep as many people happy as possible. Someone says there's a bid, someone else denies it. Someone says it's a verbal bid, so it doesn't count. Someone says it's a rejected bid, so everyone's going to deny it, but it's true anyway. And all of this flies around. And at the same time, you have to be brave, but not reckless. And by that, I mean, never put yourself in a position, right or wrong, where you feel like you're only 80, 90% sure about your story. And then with transfer reporting in particular, the most fascinating and complex aspect is that it's not always the journalists, if something changes, that are unreliable. It's the market itself. And one example of that is Jordan Henderson. I broke a story that Henderson was expected to stay originally when he ended up going to Al Ittifaq. And you think, yikes, I've got that wrong. But at the time of reporting, it was right. Sure. And then things change in the same way. Arsenal were going to bid for Morgan Rogers and Chelsea swoop in, and suddenly that bid never materialises. But what was fascinating and a learning curve for me about the Jordan Henderson story is that I went to so many sources, and I know firsthand, as has been widely reported now, thankfully Henderson came out and spoke about it, he told Liverpool to their face he was staying. So, of course, when I reported it, I was confident because I had a Liverpool source, I had a player source, I had a Saudi source, all going off. And then after about 2 hours, this was the crazy Saudi window when they were spending for fun and it surprised everyone. 100 foreigners arrived. They tripled his offer. And Henderson went, wow, maybe I need to consider this. And in the space of about 8 hours, he went back to Liverpool sheepishly and went, I know I've just told you to your face that I'm staying, but now I want to go. So don't get knocked back if you're a young journalist listening by getting something wrong. Because if your process is right and you think you get something wrong, more often than not, something will have changed and your information can still be right at the time. So be brave, have a process, put scrutiny on sources. And the general rule of thumb, even though we all try and be both, we try and be first and right, but the general rule of thumb is don't be first and wrong. So it's far better if you're starting out to be confirming things and to be getting information, even if you're not first to it, and thinking, I feel well positioned on these stories. And the last thing I would say is a lot of the work goes in outside of the window. Because if the window starts and you don't know people or you're not well positioned on a transfer, you're probably going to get nothing. So you build your trust and all your soft networking when the window's shut, and then you hope it pays off when the window opens.
But to do that and to be able to be in a position where you get your first piece of information, whether that might be at a League Two football club or at Real Madrid, to get that first piece of information that someone else doesn't have, Ben, is that just about going to football games and talking to people, going to press conferences and talking to people? Is it just about trying to speak to as many people as possible inside football and being able to build up those relations where maybe in 6 months' time, maybe in a year's time, those contacts come to fruition and you get a story before somebody else about a player?
I don't think it's even about that, because if you treat your sources as vending machines of information, then you only ever come to them when you want something. It's not really a relationship.
And I love a vending machine, Ben. You can't beat a vending machine, can you?
So I think it's more about don't assume someone is a source of information. Just put yourself in the right places to network and then build up relationships. You can go to games, you can have people on LinkedIn, you can send emails.
Instagram?
You can use Instagram, you can try and DM players or sporting directors and see whether they bite. You can go to industry conferences. There's really no right and wrong. And anyone that wants to get into this business shouldn't be thinking of it as, I'm going to suddenly break everything. They should be finding a niche. And everyone has a club they support or a local area where they can get to games or certain connections that they already know that can open doors. And then from there, you're just constantly putting yourself in the right place at the right time. There's several occasions where you put months into a story and you get outscooped by a day or even occasionally a minute. But that's the reality. But you have to have that self-confidence that there's no one way of doing it, but the right way of doing it is to try and network with people and not assume that anybody owes you any information. And also, the last thing I would say is, and I know it sounds quite perverse because I'm saying no one owes you any information, so then how do you get that first bit of information? And sometimes it's just a small bit of information that opens up the door rather than a big, this player's moving to that club. But once you've got that bit of info, the other point I'd make is being armed with something instead of kind of swinging in the dark opens doors. So if I go to a football club or a player or an agent or whoever your source is with nothing, you'll get nothing.
Sure.
But if I go to them with something, then it's in the interest sometimes of some sources to be like, well, if you're going to run that anyway, we want to tell you our side of the story. So a small bit of information can often unlock a big bit of information.
Ben, really interesting, really fascinating. And yeah, I personally enjoyed watching you operate. I feel like I'm getting in the way of you speaking to people. I almost feel guilty asking you questions, Ben, on the Transfer Insiders. You don't mind, do you?
I'll show you a little secret. Obviously, don't show this on air.
Well, you can't.
I'm not reveal a source or anything like that.
There are cameras, by the way, everywhere in the studio, Ben. So be very careful.
I'll just show you the home screen because these all started on 0, so there were no notifications at all, and you can read the phone calls that I've missed, the text messages that I've missed, and the emails that I've missed since 7 p.m.
I wish I had one DM, let alone the amount that Ben Jacobs has got. Unbelievable. Ben Jacobs and Sam Ellard with you until... Stop showing off, Ben. We get it. You're a popular man.
I mean, some of them might just be like, do you want to renew your Uber Eats account?
Yeah.
And things like
make
that.
sure you do that, by the way, as well. That's important, isn't it? It's the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT.
You said we should respect Argentina as the holders.
Mm.
Do you still respect them after their performance in the final?
Why do you, Alex?
Well, they played like a bunch of thugs. Even
Alex,
the scenes at full time, they were laying punches on celebrating Spanish.
Yeah, of course. I don't like that. Of course, that is what they do. They leave a bit on everybody. And then, of course, at the end, maybe their true mentality comes through and you see them as people.
Look at that picture on the screen now for those watching on YouTube. Is that what you want to see at the end of a World Cup final?
No, Paredes, I simply don't. What I would like to see is, look, if I'm honest, I wanted to see Messi do something in that game. I think the Spanish, though, throughout have been magnificent. I think they only conceded one goal throughout the whole tournament. They proved they kill you with 1,000 cuts. Their passing's magnificent. Rodri's, whether he's the player of the tournament, it's certainly been a magnificent turnaround from him, from Man City. But, look, they'll have to take a good look at themselves. I think the referee was doing the best he possibly could in difficult circumstances.
Because he could have got the yellow card out a lot earlier, but that would have in itself ruined the game, wouldn't it, if he started chucking out bookings?
Well, why didn't he do that? I think he could have made...
he was trying to manage the game. I think he knew that inevitably an Argentinian player
they were getting away, but they were getting away with this against England, and nothing was happening.
Yeah.
And... you reflect on that. Look, they once they stopped being physical against England and decided to play some football, we couldn't live with them. We have to accept that, but we need to build on it. And that's what will happen now. We'll go away. Manager will learn from it. I think really, in the teams that I've played in, playing under Arsene Wenger particularly was helped me.
Hello and welcome to the Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT with me, Sam Ellard, and talkSPORT's transfer guru, Ben Jacobs. It has been another busy day in the world of transfers. Ben, a story that caught me a little bit by surprise, maybe not so much you, was Crysencio Somerville leaving West Ham and for big money.
Yes, so Somerville has moved from West Ham United to Al Hilal. This was a little bit of a hijack, really, because Roma were in talks. They made 3 bids, the last of which was 46 million euros, so about 40 million quid. And Roma said they wanted a quick decision. They thought at one point in time they had player buy-in, and West Ham United felt the valuation was not met because they wanted in and around 50 million, but plus add-ons as well. And in the last 12 hours, Al Hilal have come in. They've persuaded the player to go to Saudi Arabia, and they bid 55 million fixed plus add-ons, taking the deal to almost 65 million pounds or very close to 80 million euros. So Somerville is off to Saudi. And as I said before, the club he's joining has Simon Francis, ex-Bournemouth, in the recruitment team. And very soon, after this summer window, likely is expected to have Richard Hughes as well.
It's been a busy start to the window for Aston Villa. Key players leaving. Yuri Tielemans, we know, has gone to Manchester United. Morgan Rogers will be a Chelsea player. Luca Dean also close to going to PSG. They have brought in João Gomez from Wolves. Also Johan Manzambi from Freiburg. But today, we learned that Aston Villa are in advanced talks to sign Chelsea winger Alejandro Garnacho.
Yeah, and I think this deal will happen in likelihood. Obviously, we have to let those club-to-club talks materialise, but Aston Villa have made a verbal offer for a loan with a buy obligation. And for Chelsea, that's enough because they want permanence to the exit, and we wait and see in the final negotiations if it's a straight obligation, which means it's definitely happening, or if it's a conditional obligation, which means maybe he has to play a certain number of games for Aston Villa before the actual clause is triggered. Either way, Chelsea are expecting Garnacho to go before the month is out, and Villa are the clear front runners. Unai Emery is driving this move, and Garnacho is open to it. Roma had looked as well, so they can't be discounted, and yet Roma pitched a loan also with a conditional obligation, but their overall valuation was below Chelsea's expectations.
It's an interesting one, Villa, isn't it? Because they've signed some players over the years, which have kind of, for me, raised some eyebrows. Like, Marcus Rashford, who was in bad form at the time at Man United, maybe wasn't sort of, giving it his all off the pitch. He went to Aston Villa. Unai Emery got the best out of him. Jadon Sancho, another player who was at Chelsea at the time, maybe not doing too well. Villa bought him in. And it now kind of feels the same with Garnacho, a player who I thought was really underwhelming last season at Chelsea. When he was in the team, I find him quite an inconsistent player, quite a frustrating player. But if anyone can get their best out of him, it probably is Unai Emery.
Yeah, and Unai Emery is a top coach. Villa is an excellent project. They've got Champions League football, and you would think he'll get a fair amount of minutes, much more so than at Chelsea, because Jamie Gittins is still there, and Morgan Rogers has basically just joined pending the official club confirmation. So it suits all parties, and Chelsea are going to be busy more broadly with outgoings. Don't forget, Villa also have an appreciation for Nicholas Jackson. And if that deal is to happen, my understanding is that Chelsea's valuation is £65 million.
Just more broadly, how have you found the kind of early parts of this, or not early-ish parts of this transfer window? Because, Elliot Anderson went for big money, didn't he, early on in the summer? I think the Sandro Tonali price, whilst being a good football player, we heard from Jack Cunningham, big Newcastle fan, about how he wasn't particularly good last season, Sandro Tonali, yet Spurs' package for Sandro Tonali was around sort of £90 million. Have you been surprised at some of the kind of high fees that have been paid so far in this window, or just as the years go on, these prices are naturally going to go up and we shouldn't be too surprised by it?
Yeah, it's an inflated market, plain and simple, and it's great for the seller and it's tough for the buyer to find value. And what surprised me is how many precedents we've got. So people are pointing towards the Morgan Rogers fee, but of course it was going to be that high if Elliot Anderson, even though he's a different position, is worth 116 million. And then you've got Tottenham, who have rocked the market in terms of valuations, with both Mateus Fernandes 85 million and Sandro Tonali 92.5 million, but total package approaching 100 million. Jan-Paul van Hecker in defence, I've probably mentioned him 5 times on this show, 52 million, 1 year left on his contract. A young player like Luka Vuskovic moving to Brighton and Hove Albion, that will inform some people's valuations as well. And really, the other shock is just that so many deals have been done during the World Cup, because normally during that period, the market quietens.
Why do you think we did get more done in this summer's World Cup? Was there any reason for that?
Urgency, coupled with the fact that a lot of federations were prepared to allow players to do medicals, some players wanting their future settled as soon as possible, even if it potentially disrupted them during a major international tournament. 1 or 2 deals, of course, outside of the World Cup, like Tonali, were with a player in that case that was not at a World Cup because Italy didn't qualify. So there was just some opportunism to do some deals early with players maybe that were not at the tournament as well. And then I think another thing in all of this is just that for some clubs anyway, it suited them to get the early deals. So they wanted to sell as quickly as possible, because don't forget, for some clubs, bringing in the money to get through, in the Premier League at least, the final cycle of PSR is vital. And if they left it until now, started talks and then did the deal, for clubs that wanted to close transfers and put them on the last financial year, that for many clubs, not all, but many closed on the 30th of June, they might have missed the boat.
Ben, today, what else has caught your eye?
Well, so much, to be honest. I mean, if we think about the done deals, Abdul Fatari to Ipswich for 20 million plus 3 million in add-ons is an excellent piece of business. And Ipswich have been busy because Issa Diop has joined as well. We've seen Arsenal start what I would term, even if Newcastle somewhat dispute it, formal talks for Bruno Guimaraes. Everything had been verbal and through intermediaries, but I'm expecting a direct
Explain what that means, by the way, just through intermediaries.
Well, sometimes there's more than one agent involved. Sometimes there's people working with a mandate in certain parts of the world or on behalf of certain clubs or players that are not the outright agent. And as a consequence, it's more complicated. And sometimes clubs empower individuals to go and do all the legwork before it's directly presented from the buyer to the seller. So this is what I mean about a technicality, that if Newcastle say they've not had any contact, it's because third parties are also involved. But eventually the offer's presented to Newcastle and they have to accept it or reject it. So I try not to get too bogged down, but there is a distinction between a formal bid, written, direct, and a verbal bid. And there's also a distinction between discussing the framework of a deal. And Liverpool love doing this, for example, getting something to the point of fruition, because then when you bid, you've got high confidence it's going to be accepted because you've done a lot of the work. Sure. So one of the misconceptions in the window is that people bid, and like in a football game that some people play, you have a number, it's accepted or rejected, you raise it further. If it's accepted, you put a number to the player, job done. But often there's more finesse about going, okay, we don't want to waste your time. If we bid this, what are you going to do? If we give you this amount guaranteed, but we want to pay it over 5 years or 7 years instead of 2 or 3 years. If we give you a higher number, but the add-ons are not that gettable, would you rather consider a lower number, but all guaranteed? And this is what intermediaries and lawyers and football negotiators and sporting directors and agents all do. And in some cases, it's we want to bid, we think we can get the player straight through the front door. In other deals, it's more complicated than that. And whilst those talks are ongoing, whether directly or indirectly, sometimes both buyer and seller deny anything is happening.
Ben, good stuff. This is the Transfer Insiders here on talkSPORT. When we come back, we think we've got a pretty big announcement to bring you. A very good evening. This is the Transfer Insiders. We are on talkSPORT. It is Sam Ellard and Ben Jacobs with you until 10 p.m. this evening. There is plenty going on in the world of transfers. Today been a busy day. We mentioned earlier on about Arsenal stepping up their interest and trying to bring Bruno Guimaraes to the football club. Been a busy day, been a busy couple of weeks, hasn't it, for West Ham? Of course, we know that Mateus Fernandes, they've got big money for him going to Tottenham. Also big money today for them. Crescencio Somerville, he is going off to Saudi Arabia. Perhaps a story that maybe shocked a couple of people today as well is Alejandro Garnacho being linked with a move to Aston Villa. Aston Villa want to sign Alejandro Garnacho. We've still got lots of messages coming in, Ben, from lots and lots of people wanting to hear more from you on their club. One from Darren, who's a big Spurs fan. He says Spurs have had a big start to the transfer window. What next do you think for Tottenham Hotspur?
Tottenham are going to be busy. Savinho over on the left-hand side. They quite like Cody Gakpo as well, but Liverpool ultimately say not for sale. But Tottenham are going to revamp their entire squad. They've obviously brought in Martin Dubravka in goal. We've mentioned Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Andy Robertson, Marcus Senesi. I feel like every time I mention Tottenham, I'm going to forget someone. But Sandro Tonali, Mateus Fernandes, Savinho top target, and still possibly, if Richarlison goes, a number 9.
Well, we now have some massive breaking news to bring you. Who would have thought this this time last week. A transfer that's come out of absolutely nowhere. It's escalated very, very quickly, but it is a done deal. It is official. Chelsea have confirmed their club record £117 million deal for Morgan Rogers from Aston Villa. Of course, a key part of a very successful Aston Villa team over the last couple of years. Signed off with the Europa League victory towards the end of last season, but Chelsea have been very aggressive in the market. He was linked with Arsenal, but it's Chelsea that came in with that £117 million bid. It was accepted, and Chelsea have just tweeted, he chose Chelsea. Ben, it's official. Morgan Rogers is a Chelsea player, and for £117 million.
Yes, and now we get to see that cold celebration that Morgan Rogers claims and Cole Palmer claims together, maybe on that first game of the season, an assist and a goal with them working together. But yeah, the details are Chelsea, as you say, confirming Morgan Rogers from Aston Villa, £117 million, no add-ons, a club record fee for Chelsea, 6-year contract, 1-year option. And the deal was done within 48 hours after Badad Eghbali held talks with his counterpart, Nassif Sawiris, Aston Villa. And both Eghbali plus the sporting directors, most notably Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, but the likes of Joe Shields and Sam Jewell and also Dave Fallows, who joined from Liverpool, all heavily involved. And of course, Xabi Alonso, the manager as well. Rogers' close friend Palmer and Reece James were part of the pitch. And I can tell you that Rogers will wear number 17. He'll link up with the squad after the pre-season tour to Australia and Asia, which is imminent. And this deal was negotiated by Sam Cohensal from Rogers' agency Footwork. He played a pivotal part in the deal. And we've just got a snap quote that I can read you from Morgan Rogers as well, speaking to Chelsea Football Club for the first time. And he outlined his reasons for making the move to Stamford Bridge. And Rogers said, I have had a few conversations with Xabi Alonso, and I think it's important for me to be here and that I now need to understand what this manager is like, how he is, and how he wants me to operate. It fits his system very much with the way that I see the game, the way I want to play, and the way I want to be me and be free and express myself. Him, Xabi Alonso, being part of this football club was a massive factor in me being here.
What does this tell us about Chelsea's intent this window, and maybe how there's going to be a change in their approach? Now, we had a Chelsea fan in the studio earlier who expressed his frustrations at how Chelsea have operated in the past in the transfer window, believing maybe it was more about signing younger players with a view to improving them. But this is the complete opposite. Morgan Rogers has been one of the best and most consistent playmakers in the transfer window. We know Arsenal were interested. Perhaps they were dithering a little bit. We believe their valuation of Rogers was around £80 million. Chelsea go, no, we want him. We're going to come in for him. And again, they've broken a record. He's the most expensive British transfer and the most expensive in Chelsea's history, Ben.
Yeah, surpassing Elliot Anderson at £160 million by £1 million. That extra £1 million.
It all counts, Ben. It all counts.
That's also why the deal got done so quickly, because Chelsea were prepared to pay the asking price, and with no add-ons, not much negotiation. Once you say, we're going to give you this amount of money. In addition, I would say Arsenal didn't really dither. They just had a set valuation of 80 million and they chose not to pay it. But this is a statement signing. And again, my expectation is that Rogers will be on the left, Palmer will be through the centre, Estevao will be on the right, João Pedro will lead the line.
Good attack, Ben.
Or Xabi Alonso trials 2 10s and then Palmer and Rogers can both play in that position.
In a 4-3-3, so Caicedo will sit and you think Rogers and Palmer could play in front.
3-4-3 potentially.
In a 3-4-3,
in a 3-4-3, you have to work out how you fit in Enzo Fernandez into that team. 4-2-3-1 is another option, and in that kind of scenario, Enzo Fernandez could be used deeper as he was at Benfica as a more rigid number 6 if he stays. But this is a statement signing, and it's not just because of the money or the player. This is someone that scored 10 Premier League goals last season, in back-to-back seasons, scored 14 goals in all competitions, won a European trophy and scored in Villa's excellent win over Freiburg.
Of course.
But what makes it even more of a statement signing is the fact that Chelsea have pulled this deal off with 0 European football and after finishing mid-table last season.
On Arsenal, you mentioned £80 million was their valuation of Morgan Rogers. You may be a little bit surprised if they were so interested in the player. Again, a player who we know is a top player. It's a market where, prices are going through the roof. Feels like you can't sign anyone now for less than £100 million. Were you surprised that that was the valuation in Arsenal's minds? Or do you think, hey, no problem, it wasn't to be Morgan Rogers? They'll have obviously a list of other players they'll be very confident of bringing in and very confident of making an impact to the football club.
I wasn't surprised because a lot of people in the industry last summer, and when Rodgers extended towards the back end of last year, thought 80 million would be competitive. But it's not taking into account the demand, the inflated market. You've got a peak age player. Look at the season he's had. Of course, the valuation was going to raise, and Villa have done excellent in getting every ounce or every pound out of Morgan Rogers, first on the field and then off it through this sale. But it's also a very strong deal for Chelsea. And Arsenal wanted to be disciplined in the market, because if you do one deal at this magnitude, and Arsenal need a midfielder, a left winger,
every other club
a number
then says,
9, a backup goalkeeper, etc.
Does every other club then say, oh, well, you spent that amount of money?
A right back, maybe a centre back after William Saliba. So I understand why Arsenal chose not to match the bid and move on. But the other thing is that Arsenal, like Man United, want to do deals where the player only wants them. And when they feel that that player's going to say, I'll wait, you're in a stronger position because other clubs back off. With Morgan Rogers, there was an openness to go to Arsenal. Then he spoke to Xabi Alonso and decided Chelsea was his top choice. So Arsenal, I think slightly surprisingly, were sucked into a bidding war that maybe weeks earlier they thought they had more control over. Couple that with the fact that they didn't really want to go above £80 million. And that's why ultimately Morgan Rogers is playing at Stamford Bridge instead of the Emirates Stadium.
When Chelsea announced the appointment of Xabi Alonso a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, I was really, really surprised. Because no European football, they struggled last season. I thought to go out and get a manager of his quality, I was for Chelsea pleasantly surprised to them. I thought it showed ambition. They went and got it done. Just no European football next season. They're playing one game a week. Look at what that did for Man United last season. But you go through kind of the core of that team next season. João Pedro leading the line, Esteval, Palmer, Rodgers in attack, Caicedo, Enzo in midfield, Reece James at right back. You can't forget Levi Colwill coming back into that team next season for Chelsea. Again, it's important to stress they're playing one game a week with a top coach at that football club. Chelsea fans will be thinking next year, we can compete. We can compete maybe, well, certainly for Champions League football, that be their aim. But I've got a couple of gaps in this Chelsea team. Another centre-back, a left-back because Cucurella's gone. You touched on Max Lacroix a little bit earlier on. What next do you think for Chelsea? Will Lacroix be that number one target?
Yeah, he is the number one target according to my information, but there's others. We know that they're interested in John Stones too. Is there an argument because Stones is a free agent? You even try and do both because Axel Disasi, Benoit Badiashile are both expected to leave, as is Trevor Chalobah. Como have shown an interest in him. Axel Disasi has been chased for quite some time by clubs in Saudi Arabia, and also Roma have shown an interest in the player too. So Chelsea are going to have maybe 10 plus outgoings, and I would say over a dozen if we're factoring in loans plus permanent exits. So they will still be able to move in the market, and Lacroix will all come down to Steve Parish. Is he prepared to sell? But Chelsea, I'm told, have made a competitive offer. Maybe we can't call it a formal bid yet, but in these talks, they've outlined their position, and the finances will now all come down to whether Steve Parish wants to sanction that deal. But Chelsea want another starting centre-back. Levi Colwill, who was out injured, of course, for the vast majority of last season, is so important to this project as well. And on paper, as you say, added to the fact, and it's an excellent point, that they've only got domestic football to focus on. So they've got a lot of prep time, whilst everyone else, even though you'd love to be in that position, plays European football midweek. Add all of that up, and I think Chelsea are going to be minimum, just my prediction, 80-point, 80-goal team.
Wow.
And that's usually good enough for a comfortable top four finish. And you never know, it might even put them not far off whoever wins the Premier League.
in a minute, what does this mean for Aston Villa? Always feels like a team every summer who have to sell players to keep their head above PSR. Obviously, we know Rodgers is an important part of the Aston Villa team, but I guess if you're going to lose one of your best players, make sure you get maximum value for him. And I think it's fair to say that's something that Villa have done, Ben.
Yeah, it's excellent money, and the money that Villa have brought in satisfies the financial position. But make no mistake, they have and will continue to spend some of this money because they're an ambitious club and they need to consolidate a position as a Champions League club. And what a manager they've got in Unai Emery. Johan Manzarbi, I'm going to say right now, could be the signing of the season, period. That's how highly rated he is by so many people in the game. Don't forget, Mbaye is a possibility from PSG. You've got advanced talks for Alejandro Garnacho. A striker's going to arrive, very possibly Nicholas Jackson. So don't focus on Tielemans gone, release clause Man United, Digne gone, release clause PSG. Think about now who Villa can add, because some more of this Morgan Rodgers money will be spent.
Ben, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your great insight. This has been the Transfer Insiders on talkSPORT, back same time tomorrow. Just confirmation then, it is official. Chelsea have confirmed Morgan Rodgers has joined from Aston Villa for £117 million. No add-ons. It is a club record fee, a 6-year contract with the option of another year. Morgan Rodgers is a Chelsea player. You're listening to talkSPORT. Coming up next, it's the Sports Bar.
I've got to get your opinion because Wayne Rooney delivered quite a withering assessment of it on TV last night. That half-time show, 27 minutes. Now, first of all, from a player's perspective, you're playing in a World Cup final. You're used to 15-minute half-time, particularly as you mentioned, the veteran stage you're creating. You know, Messi, for example, when maybe your joint sees up a little bit more than they would do normally. Yeah. Is it fair on the players to have to wait 27 minutes so we can see a pre-recorded song by Madonna, we can see Shakira come out and mime, and we can see Justin Bieber come out and suck the life out of the entire stadium?
Do you know, like FIFA, to stay true to the values of the game, if it's a 15-minute break in all the other World Cups, it should be a 15-minute break in this one. That's where they've gone too far. The water break as well will be thrown out. It's an Americanized, World Cup.
It was to sell adverts.
Yeah. Well, I don't care what it was for, but it was changed.